Of a number of people in the room this evening. And we have a few on Zoom as well. So welcome to our council meeting. I think we'll get started. We have, by way of introduction, we have 4 councillors on the call this evening. Councillor Woods is not available for this meeting tonight, so he sent his regrets. We do have Councillor Bray. I'm Mayor George Comrie. Beside me is our CAO clerk, Michelle Hendry. We have Councillor Lamb sitting here in the room, and we have Councillor Nash, who is on the phone. He's traveling, but you'll be able to hear him. You can't see him. So with that, I'll call the meeting to order and ask that, as we usually do, that we begin with our national anthem and stand if you're able. Thank you. The municipality of Whitestown recognizes all of Canada resides on traditional, unceded and/or treaty lands of the Indigenous people of Turtle Island. We recognize our municipality on the Robinson-Huron Treaty Territory is home to many past, present, and future Indigenous families. This acknowledgement of the land is a declaration of our commitment and collective responsibility to reconcile the past and to honor and value the culture, history, and relationships we have with one another. I neglected to mention earlier on, by the way, that we also have 2 of our staff with us in the room. Our planning assistant, Paula Macri, is here, and our treasurer, Manish Kulal, are here. And so welcome to you as well. Next, I'll ask if there is, if any councillor has a pecuniary interest to declare in tonight's proceedings. Okay, hearing nothing, we'll record that there was none declared.
Mr. Mayor, if I might through you, just a question. Obviously, the first item under delegations has to do with you. And I wonder, wouldn't it be better if I chaired that portion of the meeting? Just from an optical standpoint, or?
Well, I don't intend to make any statements to speak to it in any way, so
Okay, I
didn't feel that was necessary, but
okay, but if I'm asking questions and you're chairing, I don't want you to call me out of order or not allow me to ask my questions and that sort of thing. So it's up to you whether you do. I'm not saying it's a pecuniary interest at all. I'm just saying it's perhaps a bit of a conflict, but you do, that's fine. If you, that's fine.
You're allowed to ask questions. I'm not.
Absolutely.
I'm just,
I just don't want to be called out of order. That's all. So thank you. That's fine.
Okay, so the next item would be The approval of the agenda. Do you have oh, thank you.
Yes.
Are you going to fill in? Okay. Just looking for the order paper. Can I get a mover and seconder, please, to approve the agenda as circulated? Moved by Councillor Bray,
I'll second.
seconded by Councillor Lamb. All those in favor, and I guess we need, because we do have one councillor remote, we will need a roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes, hopefully you can hear me okay.
we can,
can.
thank you. Mayor Comrie,
Yes.
thank you. That motion carries.
Okay. So next on the agenda, we have presentations and delegations. And this evening, we have with us a presenter who is presenting a report on behalf of the Integrity Commissioner, the municipality's Integrity Commissioner, about several complaints. Her name is Megan Barrett. She's with the firm of Aird & Burles. And her report is in the package, so I guess everyone has had an opportunity to read it. So I'd like to welcome Megan and ask her if she wishes to introduce her report, and then following that, if there are questions from the council, then we can take those.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening to you and to members of council. My name is Megan Barrett. I am a partner and a lawyer at Aird & Burles, and I was the lead investigator and am the author of the report that is before you this evening. So I will take a bit of time right now to present the report and walk through the conclusions that were reached in the report and what is before council this evening, because I think that it's important to understand what it is that I am presenting to you and what it is that you should or could or can do with that information. So to first start off with our authority and jurisdiction as the Integrity Commissioner for the municipality. So we were appointed under section 223.3 of the Municipal Act by council, which appointment was extended in February of this year. And that's the capacity in which I appear before you this evening. And that is to present our investigative report on, as you noted, Mr. Mayor, a number of applications and complaints that were filed against Mayor Comrie under the Code of Conduct policy for the municipality of Whitestone, which I will refer to as the code. And so first, what I'm going to do is present the investigative report. And then after that, I will be available to answer any questions that may arise from members of council about our process and our procedure and other related matters. But I would like to be clear at the outset that council's role with regard to this matter is limited and does not extend to the investigation, the factual determinations, or the conclusions that are set out in the report. Your role as council when it comes to Integrity Commissioner matters is as an adjudicator, and that means that you make a decision based on the recommendations that are set out in our reports. In this case, there are no recommendations, as we determine that there has been no contravention. With respect to the MCIA applications, our process is governed by section 223.4.1 of the Municipal Act. And that provides that our jurisdiction is to decide whether or not to make an application to court in respect of the alleged contravention. Again, we have not decided to make an application given our finding that there was no contravention. So, as Mr. Mayor noted, a copy of the report is included in the agenda package for this evening. So I'll walk through it a little bit with you this evening. The report relates to 4 Code of Conduct complaints and 4 MCIA applications that were filed related to the mayor's participation in council meetings that occurred on March 22nd, April 11th and May 16th of this year, during which council considered and the mayor voted on the 2023 draft operating capital budget, and specifically the road grant program. And that program, as you all know, provides funding to residents for private and unassumed roads in the municipality. So the mayor's alleged contraventions of the code and the MCIA arise as he owns lands that include a private or unassumed road, and because he's a member of the Redgate Lane Association, which is a previous recipient of this grant. And his spouse and his family trust also own property and are members of the association. The mayor did not recuse himself or declare pecuniary interests at any of the council meetings. He presided over the meetings as chair, and he participated and voted on the budget, including the road grant program. The report contains a detailed review of the relevant background facts, and that's starting at page 4. And it also sets out the provisions of the code and the MCIA that were alleged to have been contravened. And those are sections 5, 5.1, 5.2, and 5.3 of the MCIA, and section 11 of the code. The materials and matters that we considered, apart from the complaints and the applications themselves, are listed on page 2 of the report. And as I stated at the outset, the investigation was conducted in accordance with our authority as Integrity Commissioner under the Municipal Act, as well as the Code of Conduct and the process and procedures that are set out in the municipality's complaint protocol. We provided the mayor with a notice of the complaint, as is our standard practice and is required by the complaint protocol, outlining the allegations and the issues that were raised. And the mayor was afforded an opportunity to respond in writing, and he did so on May 26th in this case. And we have taken his response into consideration in preparing our report, and it is referenced in the report. As with any investigative report, our report distills and synthesizes the facts and issues, assesses them against the framework of the MCIA and the code, which are clearly set out therein, and makes findings and draws conclusions. So to summarize, we concluded that the mayor did not contravene the MCIA, as he did not have a pecuniary interest in the road grant program that was present and real at the time of the council meetings that were the subject of the application. While there was a very real possibility that the Redgate Lane Association would apply for and would be granted a road grant in the future, that would be after the applications for road grants were filed in September, as contemplated by the road grant bylaw. And the case law around this section of the MCIA is clear that a potential or speculative pecuniary interest is not enough to crystallize a pecuniary interest for the purposes of the MCIA. So in other words, council was not voting on, for example, whether the Redgate Lane Association would receive a road grant or the eligibility criteria for receiving a road grant. That would have given rise to a pecuniary interest and would be a conflict under the MCIA. In this case, the council was voting on the structure of the road grants, including the quantum or the X and Y factor that would be available upon application by the various road associations across the municipality. It's a bit of a subtle nuance in terms of the analysis, but it's a really important one when you look at the case law and consider how interpretation of this section and pecuniary interest and when a pecuniary interest is engaged. Our report also references the request for advice that was made by the mayor regarding this matter. We had previously advised the mayor that council's consideration of the road grant program in this context did not give rise to a pecuniary interest. With respect to the allegations of the contravention of section 11 of the code, that deals with improper use of influence. And so section 11.2 provides that no member shall use their office or position to influence or attempt to influence the decision of another person for the member's private advantage. And section 11.3 defines private advantage to specifically exclude a matter that affects a member, their spouse, friends, or associates as one of a broad class of persons. And this is similar to the language that we see in the MCIA, but it is a little bit different in the context of the code. We determined that in this case, the mayor had the same interest in the road grant program as any other owner of property fronting on or using an unopened, private, unassumed road in the municipality. And in that basis did not contravene 11.2. Again, this would not apply if council were considering whether to grant the Redgate Lane Association specifically a road grant, but it does apply in this case when council is considering the framework for road grants that would apply across the municipality. Since we did not find any contravention, our report contains no recommendations. So therefore, council is not entitled to impose a penalty under the Municipal Act in respect of this report or investigation. And that is it in terms of the report. I'd be happy to remain and answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll open the floor to questions from councilors.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, can you hear me okay?
Oh, yes, we can hear you.
Okay,
Go ahead.
good. I wasn't sure. I did drop a call there not long ago. Megan, if I might, I had, I guess, a couple questions. So I'll start with one. And it might be more general, but I'm hoping for all of council, it might be a question that you can answer. I totally understand what you've said this evening and what your report said. And if I gather correct, there was no contravention of any act because, from what I gather, no 2023 road grant had been applied for at the time of the applications. Am I correct on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, Councillor Nash, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. And then the second part to that question is, I think it said in the report that that the mayor had asked for advice from the ombudsman, and I know during the process I also had asked for advice from the ombudsman office, as I have I'm going to say a similar circumstance to the mayor. However, I was advised that I should declare a pecuniary interest, so as such I did. So I guess I'm wondering why there would have been two different information provided to two different members of council, if that makes any sense. One saying there is no issue, and the other one saying, yes, you should apply for an issue, when I think the circumstances are very similar. Would you know anything about that or be able to answer that at this time?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Nash, you said you requested advice from the ombudsman. Do you mean from the integrity commissioner?
Integrity commissioner. I always get the names confused. Yes, from the integrity commissioner. Sorry about that.
Thank you, sir. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So, Councillor Nash, I am aware of the circumstances because I did review all of the advice prior to this meeting. And I did speak with Mr. Mascarin about this specifically because I anticipated that you might have a question about this given the similarities. So what I have to say that is important, I think, for all members of council to consider is the challenge when seeking and also giving written advice. And the challenge from our perspective is ensuring that we have all of the facts. And when it comes to interpreting the MCIA, the evaluation is very much a fact-based and fact-driven determination. And sometimes it can be challenging to provide advice when you don't necessarily have all of the facts, and sometimes we're getting it quickly, you need to make a response quickly. So as I said, I did speak to Mr. Mascarin about this specifically, and I also reviewed the advice that you're referring to. I won't go into any details about it, but suffice it to say that I did review that advice. And I can tell you that when he gave that advice to you, It was it was based on his understanding at the time that an application in your case had been filed already and was live. And as I said, that's or like an active application. So to your first question, that would be the differentiating factor, is not understanding that nuance. And so the lack of particulars in that case led to an assumption being made. And that's always a risk. If you don't have a full specific facts, there may be a need to fill in some of the gaps. So if in your case, it had been clear that there was no active application, then it would have been clear that there was no pecuniary interest. And similarly, in this instance, if there had been an active application, then the pecuniary interest would have crystallized. But since an application has not been filed yet and likely won't be until the fall, there isn't a pecuniary interest yet.
Okay, thanks a lot, Megan. That actually answers a whole bunch. So this will be my my last question, and hopefully everybody can still hear me. So based on what you've just said in the report, which I appreciate yourself and your office taking the time to provide a detailed and thorough report back and being on the call tonight to answer questions. So going forward, like if this was another year, if we rewind the clock, so to speak, speaking, like if any member of council speaks to the road grant or discusses increases or decreases or how the X factor and Y factor are calculated, as long as there's not an active application in for the road grant at that time, there is no pecuniary interest. Am I correct on that? Just so I fully understand it.
So yes, but what's important, so this is the challenge, giving this blanket advice. So what I would encourage you to consider when you're making this evaluation, which it's your personal responsibility to do so, is to consider whether the matter that council is actually talking about will affect you individually. So for example, if the Redgate Lane Association had made an application, or if the criteria for determining their eligibility for a road grant were on before council for determination, then that would be different because it does specifically relate to them. But in a circumstance where we're looking at the framework and it's more general and would apply to anyone, any prospective applicant, then that's different. Because the pecuniary interest relates to when there's a financial interest, either positive or negative, that arises. It is a nuanced evaluation, as I said, and really depends on the facts.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I know I did the side of caution as I thought I was doing the right thing. So thanks a lot. And again, I appreciate your report and you speaking tonight to all of council. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Are there any other questions, Councillor Lamb?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to say to the mayor that he asked, I guess, of the integrity commissioner whether he was in violation and was told no. So I appreciate that, and I'm not trying to demean that or the decision that's been made. However, I'm confused on nuances and this sort of thing. I guess I see what Councillor Nash has, which is the ownership of a road, as the mayor does, and that road benefits from the road grant, which is both of them do, as very similar sort of situations. I guess I'm confused because we did have quite a training session. I think it was 6 hours with the integrity commissioner when we first took office in earlier this year. And as a result of that, and again, it was a general conversation, we were told, or my interpretation and others, were that we should disassociate ourselves with road associations, etc. So Councillor Nash has, I came off of my road association, anything to do with it. Not that I had very much to do with it before. I came off the Ardbeg Community Hall. where I had paid $20. I resigned from that because they come yearly and ask for a donation, and I would be seen to be in conflict by being a member of that organization and then judging on the monies they're asking for. So, and I know Councillor Woods did the same thing. So everyone scrambled and tried to do what we were told by John Mascaron in training. So I still remain a little bit confused. But anyway, let me ask this question. You obviously went over this with John before your report was released. Is that true, Megan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. Councillor Lamb, our practice in our office, we have several lawyers who act as integrity commissioners in our office. We draft the report, we do the investigation, we draft the report, and then in order to ensure consistency in terms of the advice that we're providing and an extra layer of oversight, Mr. Mascaron reviews and works with us on the final draft of every report. So he was part of the process in finalizing this report to coming to the conclusions in this investigation. And he does answer the bulk of the advice questions that come to the municipality.
Okay, so if I understand this decision properly, and maybe I don't, the circumstances all being the same, when Red Gate Lane applies for a grant, which obviously benefits the mayor because he owns that road, and the better road, and he owns lots, I think, on the end of that road. So the better the road is, the more the greater value I would put are the lots and the road. When they apply, does that make this case all the facts being the same? Does that make this different at that point in time, Megan?
Through you, Mr.
You
Mayor.
seem to be saying, well, you know, they didn't apply. If they had applied, then that's a different story. So I'm saying when they do apply, or if they do apply, if they don't apply, I guess there's no pecuniary interest. But in essence, if they do apply for a grant, is that the trigger then?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I can clarify, because I think this is an important thing to understand, the obligations under the MCIA and a contravention of the MCIA arises based on a decision or activity at a council meeting. So that activity has already occurred. It occurred back in March and April and May when there was no pecuniary interest that had been crystallized yet. If this matter comes back before council, for example, in October, and the Red Gate Lane Association has applied for a road grant, and there's a question and a decision that council has to make on allocating the road grant to specific organizations, and specifically the Red Gate Lane Association, or some other decision that would specifically affect that application or that entity as an applicant for the road grant, then there would be a clear pecuniary interest. And for that decision, the mayor or anyone else with a pecuniary interest, Councillor Nash, would be obligated in that instance to recuse themselves.
But Megan, you must understand that it doesn't come back to council for a decision on Red Gate Lane. An application from Red Gate Lane would come into the treasurer, and he would vet it, that it meets all the criteria, and simply pay it. And the council would just get a list of accounts payable that we may get to question, but we're not approving those accounts payable. We're just seeing them. So when they apply, and that benefit is bestowed upon Red Gate Lane and the various owners down there, we don't get to make that decision. So that's I think an important factor that you haven't factored in here.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the fact of the matter, Councillor Lamb, is that when the determination was made at the council meetings in March, April, and May, the pecuniary interest had not crystallized, and therefore the specific decision that council was making and the report it was considering at that time did not give rise to pecuniary interest, and therefore there was no contravention of the MCIA.
So it really doesn't matter when it does occur, I guess is what you're saying. I guess I can go back on my roads association. I can go back on the Ardbeg community situation, because that's what we were told and that's why we got out of it, I guess. Anyway, again, this isn't against the mayor. He asked for advice and got it. I just find it very conflicting advice from that John Mascaron gave to Councillor Nash. I could read it to you if anyone's interested. The exact advice. Seems like there's kind of, I know there's case law here, but I don't think people should be on a road benefiting from the road and not declare a pecuniary interest under these circumstances when they own. But that's my own personal opinion on it. But I'll leave it for that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Ms. Barrett? Okay, thank you very much, Megan, for being with us and answering questions. And I think that concludes this matter. And you're welcome to stay and watch if you'd like, but you're free to sign off if you have other things to do. So,
Megan, if I may just ask one last question. In order to get the grant for Red Gate Lane, the owner must give permission to get that monies for Red Gate Lane. Is that a violation for the mayor in this case to give permission to get that money?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the obligation under the MCIA arises in the context of a council decision under Section 5. Typically I'm not in the practice of giving advice for other members of council to other members of council, but I don't believe so, because the obligation under the MCIA arises is triggered by the actual council meeting. And then of course there are other provisions of the MCIA that relate to influencing a matter. But in this case, again, I would need to look at it and think about it carefully, because it's not always entirely straightforward, but I don't believe so. But if the mayor or Councillor Nash is concerned about this, then I would invite them to ask for advice in writing, and I certainly will work with Mr. Mascaron in providing a response.
So let me ask one more question, not to belabor this, but I'm going to. So last year, we all went through the same thing. Red Gate Lane got, I don't know, $300, whatever the amount was. The mayor obviously gave permission and they benefited. So the exact same facts occurred last year. If there are people online or in this room who now who become aware of this right now, do they not have 6 weeks to put in a complaint based on what happened last year?
So again, it's based on a decision that occurred at a council meeting.
It did.
Okay, so I don't have all the facts in front of me based on what you're telling me. I would need to understand what exactly was voted on or considered at the council meeting. And that would lead to potentially a right to file an application. Although, as you've stated, Councillor Lamb, there is a requirement under the MCIA that that applications be filed within 6 weeks of becoming aware of a contravention. Yeah,
that's my point.
So that would be the burden or the onus on the applicant to prove that that's the case.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm finished, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, thanks, everybody. Now we have some planning items for which we Oh, I'm sorry, yes, there is a resolution that I'll put to the council, see if we can get a mover and seconder. And that is that council receives for information the Integrity Commissioner's report on code of conduct complaints and municipal conflict of interest applications in respect of Mayor George Comrie. Would somebody move that? Please? Moved by Councillor Lamb, seconded by Councillor Gray. We need a vote.
Counselor Bray,
Yes.
Counselor Lamb,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
That motion carries.
So received with thanks.
Thank you. Good evening.
Have a good evening. Now, I would entertain the motion that we move into committee of the whole to consider these planning matters. If I could get a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Bray moves, seconded by Councillor Lamb. All those in favor, and we'll have another roll call, please.
Thank you. It's 7:10. Counselor Bray,
Yes.
Counselor Lamb,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Okay, thank you. We have two planning matters, and our the secretary of the planning board, John Jackson, has joined us. So probably what I will do is get him to introduce these applications one by one, and then we will take questions from council, and if there are others who wish to in the room or online who wish to speak to them, you can have an opportunity to do that as well, as is our normal practice. So the first one is item 5.1. The applicant is Barbara Margison. It's a consent application. John, do you want to introduce that for us, please?
Certainly, thank you, Your Worship. Margisons have a property at the end of Shackle Road that actually includes waterfront, but also a substantial amount of rural land on the south side of the road. They are following suit, so to speak, of the War Boys application just a little along the road. And one of the things that stood in the way was a historical 1-foot reserve along Shackle Road, but for the War Boys application, council had removed that 1-foot reserve along the entire road. So that particular restriction does not exist in this application. Ms. Margison is creating 2 rural lots that meet the standards for new rural lots. And in terms of frontage and area, so I'm not seeing any issues. So it turns out to be a straightforward application. Be happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Nash, did you have any questions on this one?
I do not. Thank you for asking, Mr. Mayor. I do not at this time.
So is there anyone else who wants to ask a question? Don't see any online. All right, then I think we can move to the next one, which is also a consent. The applicant is Mr. Duda. And this is for, it's for conditions of approval, I guess. But anyway, Mr. Jackson, once again.
Thank you. Thank you again. This is actually just somewhat of a status report. Mr. Dudas had created 3 new rural lots off Gibson Road subject to a number of conditions, which included entering into a 5126 agreement to be registered on title to recognize certain features, including private road access and identifying the limitations of that. He also had an environmental report prepared that provided some features on the property that would or should be outside building envelopes. So the 5126 agreement actually identifies those building envelopes. The lots are all in excess of 2 acres or 2 hectares or 5 acres apiece, and the building envelopes are fairly generous. And there are a couple of other updates on the status of the conditions that are to be fulfilled. This application is getting very close to meeting all the conditions from the planning board's perspective to be able to certify the new lot. So I'm not seeing any new decisions necessarily out of council, other than technically following up and implementing one of the conditions that was made by the planning board in its provisional approval. Unless there's any questions.
Okay, thank you. Once again, any questions for this?
Yeah, I just wondered whether Mr. Duda is on the line, whether, I don't, and he may, I think we all received an email in the last 24 hours on this.
Yeah, I'm on the line.
Oh, okay, thanks for identifying yourself. I didn't recognize the number, but did you wish to make any comments?
Yeah, I would. Thanks for the time. So I'll be really brief. The Whitestone Council approved the application, and there was no conditions on the environmental side. It was clean. It's a benign report. In review, there's just not many issues. So then it went to the planning board, and there was concerns at the planning board regarding access. And so at that time, I created some easements across several of the severed pieces. And at the time, one of the members of the planning board then indicated that the building envelopes that are mentioned in the environmental report need to be attached to the easements, because the whole discussion was around access. That was the big thing. There was not discussion around the environment. There was no discussion of species risk. There was just nothing in there. So the majority of the discussion was linking the building envelopes that are in the environmental report to the easements. So I was okay with that. The process went through, received the conditions from the planning board. In the meantime, I hired 2 lawyers to look at my access along the road, Gibson Bay Road, which is a private road. And I received 2 confirmations that I have deeded access. So therefore, the easements across the severed land and the link to the building envelopes was not needed. So I contacted John there at the planning board, and the conditions were waived. They were assumed fulfilled. And from my perspective, the interpretation is that therefore the link to the building envelopes isn't needed either, because there was no discussion. And if the environmental report was to be such a strong point, and these building envelopes were to be a key condition in the compliance letter that the town has to prepare, is that it would have been a separate item, crystal clear. We must follow all the recommendations of the environmental report. And it wasn't. There was one sentence in there that links the building envelopes to the access, which was, again, the whole discussion around access. So then what happened after I received that, the town then prepared the consent agreement, and in the consent agreement was lots of environmental and building envelopes. And so the thing that I wanted to express to the council today is it's just based on decisions, and the council existing last fall had no issues with the environmental report. It's a benign environmental report. I have to follow the laws in the future regarding setbacks, septics, noise, all sorts of stuff. Depending on the type of building that my kids might want to put on there, a stable, a barn, a house, a garage, whatever it is, I have to go through a whole bunch of hoops to make sure that it's set back properly, which there's a municipal bylaw. So again, I don't really want anything in the report, in the deeds, that's linked to an environmental report that we don't need. It just muddies the waters, and I'm hoping council can review this, review that their decision in the fall did not include an environmental condition at all. There was no concerns. And so I'm hoping today that the solution could be to remove part A, the number 2, and part D, number 10 and 11. And that would make my family very happy. It would make a clean consent agreement. And that's where I stand today. And glad to take any questions for discussion.
I'm wondering first if we should ask if Mr. Jackson has a response to this question. I'm just, as Mr. Duda was talking, I'm flipping up the bylaw itself, which is that relates to this, which is on page 173 of 200, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's the one we're talking about.
Let me get to it.
And well, sorry, that's the bylaw. The actual the agreement that would be part of it is still, it starts on page 35 of 200.
Yeah,
That-
no, I see that. Okay. Yeah.
So that's the agreement, and the suggestion that Mr. Duda made was to remove what item, you said item 2
Correct.
under part A general, and what was the other thing?
Part D in its entirety, number 10 and 11. These are things that I have to apply in the future. If I was to put a structure, a building, a barn, a stable that my daughter wants, I have to comply with all those setbacks already, and we'll need additional work to make sure that I can meet all those requirements. So I'd like to request that consideration be given to removing number 2, number 10, and number 11.
Okay, well, thank you. Now that we're clear what, Mr. Jackson, can you respond to that?
Yes,
These are not things that we would normally see, am I correct?
when an environmental report is done, where there are some, I'll call substantive recommendations, we usually try to place those in some kind of recognizable context, whether it's a zoning bylaw or whether it's one of these consent agreements. I think that what happened here was we bundled the envelopes and the easement because they all would have been items included in a 5126 agreement. But when we found out that Mr. Duda had got a legal opinion that they could overburden or add the new lots to Gibson Bay Road, we didn't need that component of the condition. But because we bundled the envelope condition in that same term, Mr. Dudas wants to suggest that that should have been waived in terms of being fulfilled because the easements were not any longer required. But with respect, this is a typical condition that we put in place on many environmental circumstances, and I just don't agree with the interpretation that there was no debate. I mean, none of the board members nor myself are scientists. So when a scientist comes along and says that you need to recognize the constraint areas, this is a valid and very typical way to implement that constraint. So I don't see it as any kind of egregious posture. I think it's a typical one. And I interpret that condition to have had two subcomponents. One was satisfied by the legal opinion, the environmental one, unless he goes out, gets an environmental report to say there are no constraints and those envelopes for building, future building are no longer required. That condition, as far as the planning board is concerned, is not moving.
Okay, thank you. Just one other question, and then I'll get Councillor Lamb's question. Item D, number 11 says all setbacks shall comply with the requirements of the municipality's zoning bylaw. That would happen in any case, regardless of whether there's an agreement or not. Am I not correct? As soon as one applies for a building permit, that's going to get, our building official is going to check that, right?
Correct.
So that applies regardless of whether there's a 5126 agreement or not, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So the concern then is around the ones that, the additional things that might be identified in the EIS.
And Mr. Dudas is correct. We're all obligated to follow that legislation, but when we have more specific detailed data, such as he provided through his environmental consultant, it's very prudent to put that forward in some fashion. Now, is it going to ruin the lot, so to speak? I don't think so. I think it's going to be very helpful to future owners.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lamb, you had.
Well, I had the same question of, on number 11, in terms of the setbacks. I was going to ask Mr. Duda why he wants number 11 out, but I think you've clarified it, Mr. Mayor. Everyone has to comply with the requirements of the municipal zoning bylaw unless I've missed something.
Yeah.
Mr. Duda is am I right? Are you still concerned about number 11?
I just view it as, thanks for the question. I view it as it's a legal requirement, so why add it in? Why not add in other environmental things that are in bylaws? Why not start adding in the species at risk and all sorts of other things? You might as well, to me, be putting things in that are very specific and unique. And number 11 is not. It's a regulatory requirement. So therefore, I just don't think it should be in. Number 11, to be honest, overall is minor. It's the number 2 and number 10 that I don't necessarily agree with all the comments made. The material sort of items and this critical nature of building envelopes, the pond in question and some of the areas around it, it's a man-made pond. It's man-made. It was dug and made. And the onerous sort of extension of biologists, and there's no legal requirements from a biologist. There's no legal sort of requirements. I just think that, in terms of the whole process, I did it voluntarily, and now you're shoving it in the report. And I'm starting to think it's just not the greatest process. I'm kind of getting disappointed. Thank you.
So I guess my question through you, Mr. Mayor, would be when we come out of this to approve this, I want to say what are our options and what are the ramifications of decision, right? That's what's kind of on my mind, right?
Yeah.
Like Mr. Duda did do this on a voluntary basis, right? And I think he's been relieved from the easements that were required at one point in this process when he found out that he has land, or he has access off Gibson Bay Road. So, and the owner is going to continue to be Mr. Duda. I think this is for family planning and estate planning and that sort of thing with his kids. So I'll bring that argument up when we come out of.
When we get to the bylaw
Yeah,
part,
when we get
yeah,
to the
the bylaw for this. Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Bray.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Jackson, I was going to ask a question about if it was taken out, what does that allow someone to do with that property? If they're no longer, there's no environmental report attached to it, does the next person who wants to build there do they have to get an environmental report?
I would say not. Let's put this thing in context. The planning board provided a provisional consent with conditions. The conditions all have to be fulfilled. There was, in my interpretation, the way the language of that condition sits, is that the building envelopes prescribed by the environmental consultant are to be reflected. If the municipality enters into the 5126 agreement and were to suggest that that condition was fulfilled, probably the planning board would go ahead and certify. All I say is that the real correct method to, in fact, eliminate those constraint areas beyond the envelopes would likely to be have the environmental consultant go back and confirm that there shouldn't be any environment or shouldn't be any envelopes because they made a mistake or have not properly identified the constraints. But if council were to say, well, we're going to just say that the conditions fulfilled, I don't think the planning board is going to look beyond that clearance, if I could call it that. But I mean, I got to think it's not entirely good best practices to ignore environmental consultants, or why bother with them?
Thank you.
It's Robert. Can I respond to that?
Councilor Bray has another question, I think.
Yeah,
uh,
I was just reading the resolution from last year, October 18th, 2022. And in that section, it says B, it talks about recognizing the building envelopes identified by the consultants. The next paragraph says, with respect to the easements, that part of the condition has been fulfilled. So it doesn't talk about the environmental study. It just says with respect to the easements. And I'm just wondering from council previous, if that was still the understanding that the environmental study would be part of it.
When we have technical data of that sort through you, your worship, it's very clear those were prescribed as being the areas that were outside constraint areas. I think the easements were the concern I described earlier, and that was to ensure that should these lots not enjoy the ability to use Gibson Road, we had some form of legal registered easement to get to them. And as it turned out, the easement issue was solved by an opinion saying that you could, in fact, use Gibson Bay Road. So I take that as, I mean, it may be cumbersome, it may be awkward having had them bundled up in the same bullet, but I see them as separate entities. And I'm satisfied in my own mind that the acre to 2 acres of building envelopes on each of these new rural lots is got a lot of area for building. So I'm not sure of the reticence that's occurring here. Thank you.
Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, just one final question, John. Is it fair to assume that Mr. Duda did this environmental study on his own and it wasn't required? Like if he hadn't done this environmental study, wouldn't everything have just proceeded, or is there some mandatory thing that said he had to do the environmental study?
Well, we tend to red flag things that we think require environmental studies. I would say that in this case, Mr. Duda was very forward thinking. And not very often do people volunteer these kinds of things. So I just thought he was being very progressive in terms of his presentation, and that was all, gold star for that, for sure. So
Well, you, with all due respect, you didn't answer my question, but
did he have to do it? I
yeah,
guess.
did he have to do it is my question.
No, I know, I get that, Councilman, and I guess I couldn't answer that because it just showed up with the application.
Yeah,
But if it hadn't showed-
he took a progressive step, as you say, and now it's coming back. There's nothing in the environmental report that says there's blanding turtles and there's all kinds of things on his property that are environmentally hazardous and that sort of thing that I read anyway. And now it's coming back to kind of bite him. So anyway, again, I'll address it when we come out of this section. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the question that Councillor Lamb is trying to get an answer to is if, let's suppose that the application had been submitted without the environmental report, would you, in your capacity as with the planning board, would you have turned around and said to him, no, you got to go get an environmental report and for those particular property, knowing what you know about those properties just by looking them up?
Yeah, and we have data. It's not as detailed as an environmentalist looking at a specific property, but usually if wetlands show up, if there are known identified species of concern, that sort of thing might trigger. We as council is aware, we don't trigger a study for every application. We try to flag the ones that do. So that exercise didn't have to happen for Mr. Duda because he just came up with it.
Okay, well, thanks. And just one other thing. I don't want to prolong this unduly, but just confirm for me that I understand sort of where we are in the process. We are still in the lot creation section of the process. Once there is a 5126 in place, then the new lots can be created. Once that happens, the planning board itself is now out of the picture at that point. Am I not correct? So the onus then becomes on the municipality down the road to determine whether there is compliance with the requirements of the 5126.
Yes,
Correct, because that happens at building permit time. Nothing, I mean, he could sit on those 3 lots for a long period of time before he decides to build anything on them and applies for a building permit. So
it's almost an exercise in flagging the property. I think if it's of any interest, that I don't think of a subdivision agreement, because that's what a 5126 is, registered on title. I do not believe it's applicable law. So all the exercise really comes down to is flagging it for a future owner, and it will save them the step to know where they might avoid any conflict with the Endangered Species Act in this particular instance.
okay, thank you.
And Mr.
Do
Mayor,
you have any questions, Councillor Nash?
I would, through you, Mr. Mayor, and I apologize. I did have to phone in 2 times during the conversation on this one, so I might have missed some stuff. So I apologize to everybody listening and in the room if I ask a question that's already been answered. I guess I have a couple questions to it, and I guess the first one would be just in our package under Appendix A. Could staff let me know, or John, what is Appendix A in our package? Is it the reference plan, or is Appendix A the environmental report? I'm just wondering first. That's my first question.
The severance sketch. It's the severance sketch.
Okay, thank you. And if it is the severance sketch, when we're referring in a legal document to parts of land, would we normally not be referencing a reference plan over a sketch?
Through you, Your Worship, not necessarily, and probably more common just a sketch, because by the time the survey gets done, we've already advanced this condition. So the sketch is again for information mostly, and it's not got the preciseness or precision that a survey would necessarily have. So in terms of the order of things, the consent agreement with a consent sketch showing certain details like the building envelopes would be probably 6 months or more in advance of any final survey.
Okay, thank you, John. So I just want to, and maybe I'm looking at a wrong package, but when I read Schedule A, and I know there was something sent to us late today, so I might not have it again. I'll apologize if that's the case. Page 39 of 200, or page 5 of the Schedule A, says the subject lands on 42R 22-196. Yet when I look at the next page, it that's me on my print. Are you able to hear me okay, or did I cut out?
I think you cut out.
Oh,
Not sure I'm not sure we got what the question is, Councillor Nash.
yeah. Are you able to hear me now through you, Mr. Mayor? Okay. Okay. All it was, sorry, and again, I apologize. Page 38 of 200 on my agenda package, it says Schedule A, and it refers to 42R 22-196. When I flip to the next page, being page 40, it's the environmental impact study. So that's where I was wondering, am I missing this sketch or the reference plan that should be in there?
No.
For those of you on Zoom, this is Paula Mackey, our planning assistant, is going to speak to that question from Councillor Nash.
This is part of John's report. It's not part of the 5126.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Nash, my memorandum had 4 attachments to it. The first attachment was the report from John Jackson. The second attachment is the reference plan 42R 2216. Third attachment is the consent agreement. And the fourth attachment was the environmental study. So the consent agreement is only 5 pages, which is attachment 3, page 35. And the only item that is attached to the consent agreement is Schedule A, which describes the severed lots.
Okay, thank you.
So attachment
thank
2 is not part of the 5126 agreement, if that's the question you were asking. It's a separate.
Yeah.
The sketch that you referred to, that's part of the report, not the
Okay.
5126.
Okay, all right. And then the reason I was asking through you, Mr. Mayor, is when it said being parts 1 to 4 on 42R 22-196, and again, it's either a question
Yes.
for Paula or for John. The retained lot, I'm assuming from what I can see on the reference plan, is one of those parts 1, 2, 3, or 4. And I wouldn't think that the retained lot, which I believe is part one, which is the largest pot left, would be part of this 5126 agreement. It would only be the three severed parts. So I'm wondering why we're saying parts 1 to 4 instead of parts 2, 3, and 4.
I think the retained parts 1 would still be, although they're not subject to the building envelopes, they'd be subject to the recognition that they're still accessed by a private road. So there's some applicability to all of the property.
All right. No, okay, perfect. Thanks, John. And then my final question, I believe, and you might have already answered this because I think when I dropped the call, I think you were answering something to the effect of it. And it would be, would there be any reason why we shouldn't, instead of well, I guess you've already said it, the actual environmental report is not going to be attached to this agreement. I think you just said that, so I think I've answered my own question. It's simply a sketch that's going to show the building envelopes. It's going to be attached as Schedule A. Am I correct?
That's the normal practice. You just refer back to the report.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much, John and Paula. Appreciate it.
And Mr. Mayor, it's Robert Duda. I'd like to add a couple further comments then.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so yes, thank you. I appreciate everybody's effort in this, and hopefully they understand why I question things and why this has impacts on my family's land in the future. You're attaching things to a deed, so this is not unimportant information. So why do I think it's important? It's critical. It's being attached to my deed and my investments, my land, and my kids and their kids. So it's critically important. I'm severing land. That's what our family's trying to do. We're not building. So all this talk about building and future, and that's not what we're doing today. I'm trying to sever the lots. I prepared the environmental report and had it commissioned to identify that we could build, that there is no environmental issues, and that it comes back clean. So I'm happy. And now it's being shoved in the report, and it's frustrating because I did it proactively to make sure that the land could have future development, future things for my kids. The only thing I'm asking to do now is sever it. And therefore attaching extra things arbitrarily, you mentioned, John, and others, that there's environmental reports not in all applications. So it seems to be arbitrary here and there and pick and choose. And this application here, we're just shoving in building envelopes. Well, what about the species at risk? What about septics? So it just seems to be picking and choosing. So the report, again, to council, please consider this, that there's no issues in the environmental report. There's always going to be setbacks. There's always going to be environmental regulation, which it's my responsibility to follow. It's my responsibility. It's not the town's responsibility to follow the laws. It's mine. It's my land. I follow the rules, period. I hope everybody can respect the private property and the ownership. We're going to follow the laws. I'm proactive. I'm an environmental engineer. I care deeply. But from a technical perspective, I just don't think this should be in the deed. Thank you. Appreciate everybody's time.
Okay, thank you. If there are no further questions, are there any other questions related to this one? Okay, I think that would then allow us to reconvene into a regular meeting. And then we can deal with the first consent application. The rest will come. We do have another planning matter in a minute, but it's part of a public meeting. So let's, if there's nothing further, could I get a mover and seconder, please, to move back into regular meeting? Councillor Lamb moves, Councillor Bray seconds. Thank you. We'll call the vote, please. Madam Clerk.
Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash, We have lost Counselor
Don't
Nash.
see him anymore, actually.
You'll be calling back in.
Yeah,
Oh, here he is. We'll just
Oh, he's back in already.
is he?
bring him back in.
Counselor Nash, are you back with us?
Can hear me. Again, I apologize.
Okay, we can hear you now. We're in the middle of a vote on this to return to regular meeting.
So, yes,
Mayor Comrie,
Yes?
thank you. That motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. And it is 7:50 PM, I guess. We're doing that. My magic computer clock. All right, so under matters arising, we could deal with the first one as follows. I'll read the motion and ask for a mover and seconder. Whereas John Jackson Planner Inc. has prepared a report dated July 7th, 2023 for the Parry Sound Area Planning Board regarding consent application B16/2023 Whitestown. The applicant is Barbara Margison and provided a copy to the municipality of Whitestown. Now therefore be it resolved that the council of the municipality of Whitestown receives this report for information and that the council of the municipality of Whitestone recommends this consent application for approval in principle, subject to the following conditions, and there are 3 of them. Number 1, that payment of a parkland dedication fee be made in accordance with the current municipal fees and charges bylaw. 2, that the newly created 2 lots receive 911 addressing from the municipality. And 3, that payment of all applicable planning fees be paid to the municipality of Whitestown. Can I get a mover and seconder for that, please? Councillor Lamb moves. Councillor Bray seconds.
Just alternate back and forth.
All right. Any discussion on this motion? All right, so we could call the vote on this one, I guess, please. Madam Clerk.
Counselor Bray,
Yes.
Counselor Lamb.
Yes. Yes.
We do not have Counselor Nash.
Gonna pass.
Mayor Comrie,
Yes.
thank you. That motion carries.
All right, thank you. And 5.2, there's a motion for it that the memorandum from Paula Macri, Planning Assistant dated July 18th, 2023. Read the status of conditions of approval, this is the matter we just discussed, Mr. Duda's application, be received for information. May I get a mover and seconder for that, please? Councillor Bray moves.
So are we going to be dealing with this later on?
Yeah, it's a bylaw if we
That's
decide.
near
to,
the
yeah.
end.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll second.
this is just to receive the report.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I believe Counselor Nash is back.
Um,
No,
I don't see him.
he was
Momentarily,
momentarily and
yes.
he's gone again. I apologize. It was Counselor Bray moved and
Councillor Lamb seconds.
that was a good guess. Thank you, Counselor Bray,
Yes.
Counselor Lamb,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes,
Thank you. That motion carries.
okay, thank you. So now, we have an application.
Public meeting.
Yeah, we have a. This is actually a rezoning, and for that, we would normally have a public meeting. So we need a motion to adjourn the regular meeting to hold a public meeting for the following matter, and it's application by James Mason to rezone piece of property, and we'll come to that in a second or two, but we need the motion to go into the public meeting. Who's going? Your Councillor Lamb is moving and Councillor Bray is seconding. Are you ready to vote, Madam
Yes,
Clerk?
thank you. Counselor Bray,
Yes.
Counselor Lamb,
Yes.
Counselor Nash.
Yes.
He's back. He's back. Mayor Comrie,
Yes.
thank you. That motion carries.
All right, thank you. We are now in a public meeting as of 7:54 PM. So I'm going to just introduce the public meeting, the protocol for the meeting very, very quickly. Once again, there's introductions. We have with us in the room Councillor Bray, Mayor Comrie, and Councillor Lamb, and we have Councillor Nash on the phone. He's traveling, and Councillor Woods is sends his regrets. And we also have with us in the room our CAO clerk, Michelle Henry, our planning assistant, Paula Macri, and our treasurer, Manish Kulal. Again, I will ask, is there any pecuniary interest on the part of councillors with respect to this particular proceeding, this item? And it appears that there is none. I will ask, this public meeting, I will ask that all comments be addressed through the chair, through me. And that anyone who chooses to speak to this, please state your name before speaking. If you are in the room, we will get you a microphone so that the people who are on Zoom can hear you. Otherwise, they won't be able to. So that's kind of the protocol. The next thing is I will ask if the clerk, if there was any notice received in regards to this item.
In regard to notice, it's, I can report the notice was posted on the municipal website and on the public bulletin at the municipal office on June 6th. Notice was published in the Parry Sound North Star on June 15th, and no correspondence has been received.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. So we are ready for some discussion. The applicant, as I said, is Mr. James Mason. He is here in the room with us this evening. He is proposing to rezone part of Lot 4, Concession 4 in Mackenzie Township. And that's part 1 on the Plan 42R 4131. From the Waterfront 3 Limited Services Zone to the Waterfront 3 Limited Services Exception Zone. And there is a report in the package from our planner, Mr. Jackson, who explains why this is being done. And I wonder maybe if the first thing I should do is ask John if you would like to say anything by way of introduction.
Certainly, Your Worship, through you, the application is relatively straightforward. We have a tool in the Planning Act where a person can ask for a temporary allowance or a provision that in the first instance is not otherwise permitted. What's happened here is Mr. Mason wants to build a home, but in order to do that, it would be best for him if he had some garage structure that he could use as a sort of a base from which to operate. He had some frustrations trying to deal with a contractor that I guess really didn't show up. And so he's pretty sure and confident that he can get this building up within a 3-year temporary allowance. So at the end of that 3-year period, he should have a home built at that time. and it'll all fall back into place. We've done this kind of cart before the horse thing a couple of times, which is often the case in a small rural municipality where people tend to be hands-on for their own construction. So I qualify it as being pretty straightforward and easily supported. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll now ask Mr. Mason if he wishes to speak to your application. He's here in the room with us. Do you have anything you want to say, sir?
Use the mic.
Yes, hi, this is Jim Mason. I've never been in a position like this before. We've owned our property on the Brash Lake for 20 years now, and we wanted to build our log home, and things just didn't work out. And finally, we wanted to get going on it in last year, 22, but we were overwhelmed with some of the costs that they didn't disclose to us. So I just couldn't go into any further debt to do that. So what I'd like to do is build a garage that I can store my machinery in, and have a workshop, and then I can basically just do a stick frame cottage that we want to build. That we've been dreaming of having a cottage now for too long. So basically all I want to do is build this garage, so I've got a place where I can do a lot of the work necessary to stick frame our cottage.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Are there any questions or comments from the public? People, I'll start with people in the room here. Anybody have anything they want to ask or raise? If not, is there anybody online who has a comment or question? Anybody on council? Councilor
Through you,
Lamb.
Mr. Mayor. Oh,
Councilor Nash, I think.
Councilor
Yeah,
Nash. did
thank-
you- oh, okay.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, if you want to go first, but we've got you online.
Yeah,
so
well,
Let you go first.
I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. I guess I had two quick questions. And I guess I'll ask yourself, John, and if not, maybe the applicant might be able to answer it. I see on page 78 of my agenda package, there's a sketch that shows it's a yellow highlight that says existing right-of-way. So I just wanted to make sure, from what I'm looking at, there's already an existing right-of-way that travels along a back lot, I'd assume, and gives the applicant right-of-way to the property. So there's no issue with rights-of-way, if I'm correct. This is simply that's kind of not an issue. The only question here is if we can do an exemption for 3 years to allow a garage before a permanent dwelling. And if I'm correct on that, my second part to that question would simply be, what would happen should a building permit not be pulled out after a 3-year time frame?
First question, through you, your worship. Yes, there is a registered right-of-way available to Mr. Mason's land. And I've seen the exact occurrence that Scott describes, whereby it was necessary to pass a second follow-up bylaw for a further 3-year for certain projects. So it's not unusual. It sounds like Mr. Mason is more anxious to get this thing moving than not, so I'm not too worried about it.
Okay, thanks, John.
Okay, Councilor Nash, thank you.
I'm not Counselor Nash.
I'm sorry, Counselor Lamb.
Thank you. Joe is my first, no, I'm
Yeah.
okay. So I had a call on this, and thank you, Mr. Mason, for coming today. They had 2 or 3 concerns with this, and I think I've run down most of them, but they wanted to make you aware of, I think it's called the Lads Bridge, or the Lads Road Bridge, that there are certain restrictions on the load capacity there. So as you build, you need to make your contractor aware that you know, depending on whether it's a single axle, double, or triple axle, that there's different load restrictions, because they don't want. So as long as you know that, please be aware of that, because we don't want to get into an issue then. Okay, thank you. The second issue they had was kind of to try to explain how you got the address of 14 Sam's Lane when you're not actually on Sam's Lane. And I asked our planning assistant this afternoon, and I think the answer is because the road, or the road allowance coming up and is all sort of, well, maybe she can explain that. So because the people that literally own Sam's Lane is not you. Okay, but you have an address, and the concern that the person had was that by granting this, that you didn't get some sort of automatic right to use, that road, and that sort of thing. I think you understand it. So if you could comment it on, or John or Paula or someone, that was the second concern.
Yes, it sounds complicated, but it's not. Yes, at the end of Lads Road, where there's a bridge, and Lads Road continues, but then you make a right turn, and that's where the unopened municipal road allowance starts. And that goes towards several people who own property on Deer River. But once you actually continue going straight on the unopened municipal road allowance, there's a fork in the road, and to the right, that is what I was told being Sam's Lane. And initially I was told that Sam owned all that property and that he was going to give me the right to travel so that I could get to mine. However, there was many, two of the people that didn't want me to use Sam's Lane. And the reason was because Sam thought that Sam's Lane was on his property, but it was not. It was going across all of the members of the people who lived along that. So I would be trespassing. So that's why I had to finally work out an arrangement with Sam that I would continue going up the unopened road allowance. And when I got to Sam's property, then we got an agreement that we now jointly owned the road from the unopened municipal road allowance all the way to my property. So I don't really use any part of Sam's Lane except the unopened municipal road allowance before Sam's Lane actually starts. So I'm not on Sam's Lane, and that's always been confusing with me because in order to get to our property, you can't take Sam's Lane. You have to take the left fork of the road, go further up the unopened municipal road allowance, and then you turn onto my driveway. And my driveway is the jointly owned property going across Sam's Lane to my property.
Okay, thank you. In unopened, I keep hearing unopened road allowance. when there are unopened road allowances, I think we have agreements with people that use that. And I guess my question of staff is, do we have such agreements in place for these properties? I mean, I'm talking Dams Lane and
Well, I know when I first started doing that, I was notified by the town ship that I had to have insurance, that the town wasn't responsible for anything or anybody traveling on that. So initially it was introduced to me that it was totally my responsibility.
okay, but there's more than you that use the unopened road allowance.
For the
There-
first,
There's
for the
four
first
other lots, are there not?
for the first approximately, just thinking out loud, maybe 200 yards. That is the unopened road allowance, which is called Sam's Lane, but then people continue going further on into Sam's Lane, where I stay on the municipal road allowance. Unopened
Okay,
municipal road allowance.
again, I'm just trying to make sure that we've got the right agreements in place, and I'm not sure whether we know that information. Because anyone using unopened, you keep saying unopened road allowance, it's not, it's open, right? I guess is my point. And-
Well,
But we know, but through the municipality, we have agreements that capsulate the insurance and who, and the liability and all that kind of stuff. So that's a question of staff that I have on this one. Which
Do you have
may-
a comment, Mr. Jackson, to that?
I'm, this goes back many decades, but I'm almost certain there is an agreement. Maybe Paula would know, but I'm almost certain that this was a high profile property. So I'm going to say there are agreements in place.
I don't know, Paula? Oh, sorry.
Sorry,
That's
through
okay.
you, Mr. Mayor, I will look into that matter.
Okay. Okay, so the third concern that the person that called me had was like, do you have any current buildings on your property?
yeah, I have a couple of sheds that are there, and basically it's been a campsite for so long.
Yeah.
So
Their concern was that you're only allowed one building. You can't have a garage and some sheds and a bunch of other things by the building code and those sorts of things. So that was their concern, that technically, I think when you don't have a permanent dwelling, you have to, either take down your sheds before you build your big garage, right? So that was their concern to me. So I don't know whether John has anything to say on that or staff. Again, I'm just relaying to you the facts that were given to me by the person that called me. So I've never been down there, so I don't pretend to, other than through maps, know it. So.
I haven't been down there in many years, but it should be known that any building that is not large enough for the requirement of a building permit, which is now 15 square meters, we wouldn't even have knowledge of. So if those sheds are under 15 square meters, probably there is no violation.
I was sort of led to believe you can't have multiple buildings on a lot, but I don't know. I'm not the expert.
We-
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm not the expert either, but my understanding is that that without a primary residence, without a primary structure, you typically are not permitted to have an outbuilding, even if it's smaller than 150 square meters.
So
Now,
that's the
that's
issue.
something we'd have to check
Yeah,
on
that's
with
the
the,
issue. So, I think from my standpoint, there are enough questions here that we should get answers as to whether there are agreements in place. And, also the building or the number of buildings that are there and what Mr. Mason may may have to do in order to build a garage. And again, I'm not saying I'm against what you're asking. I just think we should get that clarification before we start approving garages, that are this big. There is a precedent in, we did, I think, Mr. Anderson a couple or 3 years ago, on Dubois Lake, I think, and we did a very similar type arrangement, but, anyway, so I would suggest that we, based on the questions that I have, that we maybe consider deferring this until we get the answers and bring it back to another meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments from, or questions from councilors? Okay, if not, I guess we could have a motion to adjourn the public meeting and reconvene into a regular meeting. Councillor Bray moves. Councillor Lamb seconds. All those in favor, we'll have a roll call vote, please. MCAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is 8:15. Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash is still with us.
Yes, yes.
Mayor Comrie,
Yes.
thank you. That motion carries.
Okay, thank you. We are now back in the regular meeting at item 7 on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. Could I get a mover and seconder, please? For the following, whereas the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone has reviewed the consent agenda consisting of council and committee meetings, regular council meeting revised minutes for Tuesday, June 6, 2023, regular council meeting minutes for Tuesday, July 4th, 2023, and regular closed session meeting minutes for Tuesday, July 6th, 2023, and the unfinished business listed on page 4 of the agenda. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby approve the following: the regular council meeting revised minutes of Tuesday, June 6, 2023, the regular council meeting minutes for Tuesday, July 4th, 2023, and the regular closed session council meeting minutes of Thursday, July 6, 2023, and that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone receives for information unfinished business, the unfinished business listing contained in the consent agenda dated July 18th, 2023. Can I get a mover and seconder for that? Mouthful. Councillor Lamb is moving. Councillor Bray is seconding. Any discussion?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you can hear me okay?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect.
Councillor Nash.
And I kind of don't want to go on about this comment too much. I'll just make a comment about it and then hopefully we can carry on. I know.
I lost him.
Referring to page.
He's still there. He's still
still
showing on this screen, but
He's back.
you did break up a bit there, Councillor Nash.
Yeah, are you able to hear me okay
Mhm.
now? Okay, sorry about that. On page 95 of 200, if I'm reading it right, and I know I've spoken about the June 6 meeting minutes several times. So the only comment I'd have is I see under page 11 of 12 of those meetings, under Councillor Nash, there's 2 line items. One of it's the last bullet on the page 95 where it says note, and then it speaks to something in regards to a comment that the mayor had made. And then on page 96, the very first bullet says note and speaks to a comment the CAO clerk said. And I just wanted to point out something in our procedural bylaw, and this is why I've asked that it be taken out a couple times. And it refers to that meeting minutes will be recorded by the clerk without note or comment. And I know I've asked for those comments to be taken out a couple times. Those weren't the comments I'd made. They're comments that were made subsequent to my comment. And I know very often we carry on debates sometimes in councillor questions, but we don't carry on that dialogue that goes on in our meeting notes. So in our procedural bylaw, it says we won't include note or comment, but yet on my councillor notes, that's what's been done. So again, I'd ask that those two items be stricken, which I've asked, I think, on 3 separate occasions, which is why they keep coming back, and I still see them there. So that would be my request. And then just going forward, I think we just need to follow that. And if there's a new section under councillor comments and there's a section for the mayor, I think that would be great. But just, anyways, those are my comments. And I know I have a bad signal, so I don't want to take up too much time with this and let the meeting carry on. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
I think we need to take a recess. For some reason, my computer is not charging. I just need to, if we could just give me a few minutes, I want to make sure everything is okay here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
We're going to take a very short recess for,
Councillor Nash, what 2 items, are you still there?
did this get knocked out? You hang on.
Yep,
Are
I'm
you
here.
still there?
Still there?
yes, I am.
What
Yep.
were the 2 items on page 95?
Oh,
that
it
we're
was-
talking, the
It
last
was
2
page
items?
page 95, the very last bullet.
Noted that the
where
fire
it says-
truck closed
Yeah,
and
it
inquired
says
why the
no.
memo from the fire
Is
chief
that
has
what it
not
is,
been,
I think?
is that the one?
You
Yeah,
got a
it
red
says
light on
no.
over in the side there, so it's.
It says note.
Oh, no,
If you can
Mayor
hear me, it
Conley
says
noted the fire chief hasn't yet completed the, oh, I
your
see.
chief
Okay.
hasn't yet completed the information.
And you're requesting
delivered, I
that
think.
come out, is that right?
Correct, because I think that's not something that I spoke to, it's something somebody else spoke to. And I understand the information to be that the fire chief had submitted something, it just wasn't up, what expecting in detail, so it was pulled. And page 96, where it says CAO clerk, Hendry advised that these employment costs, that sentence again, I'm only asking them to take out, in our procedural bylaw, it says that we won't make the clerk without note or comment, and yet we're making note or comment on those 2 items, right? Instead of just what the topic was. So that's why I'd asked them to come out, that's all.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think we're charging again. I know we're still on recess. Are we still on recess or are we back?
Well, I think, yeah, we should.
Take a minute. I need
Take a minute?
Okay, go
we'll
ahead, Dan,
continue.
please. And we'll-
No need
we're on a recess for the moment. Under bylaws. Yeah, well, we're coming to it in a minute, yeah. Hopefully not too long, but payable staff reports. See where it is. Right.
Yeah, he's using the right. Hamilton. I guess. Take them down. Up to, then they, the right of. You're right.
All right, thank you. Okay, I think we're ready to go again. And before we had that short recess, we were just discussing these minutes. Here's my suggestion so that we don't, I mean, this is the third time we've been around on this particular thing. Councillor Nash, your concerns have to do with the format of these particular notes that are in the minutes. And I'll be candid with you and say that I have issues of my own with the fact that I think there's putting this amount of detail in here, invites this sort of thing. And if you read the details of what's there, you'll notice that people are doing things in what are really this is a part of the agenda that is intended for councillors to make announcements about things, to congratulate people for things or the achievements or the things that they've done, or take note of events that are happening in the municipality, this sort of thing. But they're not to direct staff to do various things or request that something, those things need to be the subject of motions, and they need to come before the business in a proper manner. So what I would like to do, there is nothing factually incorrect about this. You're arguing about the format of it, but I don't think the format matters. Our clerk is going to get, I understand, is going to get some advice on what to do in the future to avoid this, but I would like us to just approve these minutes and not have them appear again at another. If they were inaccurate, if they said something that wasn't true, then yeah, I could see that you might want to make an issue out of it, but this is not part of the business of council. It's just, we're not drawing any lines in the sand or approving anything. We're just, giving people an opportunity to make comments, and I don't think that should bog us down meeting after meeting. So we did we get a mover and seconder for this motion?
Yes, Councillor Lamb moved and Councillor Bray seconded.
All right. Unless another councillor has some comments on this, I would like to just call the question to approve it, please.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we're dealing with the June 6th meeting, right?
Yeah.
I think all that Councillor Nash is asking is that the last note come out. Is that correct, Councillor Nash? Through you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm just asking that the part that mentions note in brackets comes out for the last two bullet points. And the only reason for that is more a procedural thing. In our current procedural bylaw, it reads all other proceedings in sequence without note or comment. And when we have in bracket note, we're not following our procedural bylaw. So those two comments in brackets should just simply come out of the minutes. That's all I'm asking, or was commenting on.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's not unusual that you see a clerk's note in meetings, and it is the clerk's prerogative. But I did indicate to the mayor that I will seek some guidance. Certainly the councillor items component of the minutes has grown significantly to include many items that we've never seen before in this part of the agenda. So I think that the whole piece of how this is recorded, what's sometimes there's some intentional direction to staff, which is not the place for something like this. It's, it's a motion and a resolution that's passed by the majority of council when there's direction, but sometimes the minutes reflect something different. So I want to look at all of how this is done in the future. But as I said, it's not unusual that you see a clerk's note. Sometimes there's directions, sometimes it provides some clarity to something that was said. And that's my prerogative as a clerk, as far as I know. So I will indeed get some little bit more guidance, talk to my fellow clerks who have been in the business for many years. And we can maybe look at things a little differently in the future or not.
As I said, I would still like to call the question for the,
Can we do the June sixth meeting separately? Because I don't want to confuse them with the other two. Because I think we should get that advice before we approve the minutes.
well, yes, you can. You can always sever something from the consent agenda if you want.
What, I'm the mover or the second?
I can't.
You're the mover?
I'm the mover. Well, I'd suggest we defer this 7.1.1 until we get that advice. And it'll come back at the next.
All
meeting,
right.
And we approve 7.1.2 and 7.1.3
Okay, all right.
and 7.2, I guess, too.
Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
We're just doing, as I just said,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, we have removed the
Yes,
minutes
thank you.
from the
Yes.
consent agenda.
Yeah, thank
So
you.
we're just
Yes.
approving the consent agenda minus
I
those.
agree with myself. Thank you.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie,
Yes,
carried.
okay, thank you. Number 8 is accounts payable. And need a mover and seconder that the council of the municipality of Whitestone receive for information the accounts payable listing in the amount of $312,886.56 for the period ending July 12th, 2023. Who will move that? Councillor Lamb moves. And Councillor Bray seconds. Okay, any questions or? Well, they're just questions. Any questions about the payables? Anybody know any questions? It sounds like there aren't any, so we call the question on the vote to receive the report, please.
Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie,
Yes,
thank you, carried.
thank you. That's approved. So that brings us to staff reports. And the first one is 9.1 is PLN 2023-01, which is the planning department statistics for Q1 and Q2 of 2023. Can I get a mover and seconder, please, that council receive for information report FIN 2023-06 budgetary control, sorry. Yeah. No, sorry. I got, let's start over again. Here's the motion I'm looking for. That the council of the municipality of Whitestone receive for information report PLN 2023-01, the Q1 and Q2 planning statistics.
I think it's.
Well, Councillor Bray moves. Councillor Lamb is seconding.
Don't be afraid to pipe in, Council.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Councillor Nash, you can move or second any of these if you want. So, is there any discussion about these? Any questions or comments? Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, just, it's a good report, Paula, or Paula's here, good report. I don't remember seeing this one in this form before. Is this new?
Yes, it's a new,
Oh, well, not only is it
Quarterly
new,
report.
it's good. So
Yeah.
keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Your boss should give you a big raise. I'm only kidding, only kidding.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments on this? This one? Okay, can we call the question on it, please? and
Counselor Bray,
receive it?
Yes.
Counselor Lamb,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Carried.
All right, so 9.2 is the budgetary control report for the 6 months ending June 30th. And the motion would be that the Council of Municipality Whitestone receive for information report PLN, sorry. I keep jumping to the wrong line here. Receive for information report FIN 2023-06. That's the budgetary control report for the 6 months ending June 30th. Who will move? Councillor Lamb moves. And well, I will take you, Councillor Bray. Thank you. Councillor Bray seconds. Once again, I moved and seconded. Are there any questions on this financial report?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I might, I had two
Go ahead.
very quick minor questions. I guess just in general, after reading through it, just how does staff feel we sit financially compared to what we budgeted? And second of all, based on where we stand now, I know at the end of the third quarter, or it might have been the beginning of the third quarter, we would have known if we had to take out the possibility of the loan this year. And where does that stand in the eyes of staff right now, if that's going to have to occur or if it will not have to occur? Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Our treasurer will answer. Nish?
Through you, Mayor. Sorry, Nash, can you please repeat your question? I couldn't understand.
Sure, Manish. The first question was, how do you feel we stand currently overall, the financial position as to where we thought we would be at the end of the second quarter? And the second part of the question was, it was spoken about during budget times that there may need to be a loan taken out if financing changed by the third quarter. I think it was for about a couple $100,000. So I was wondering if we knew where that stood, if in fact a loan may be required, or if we feel it will still not be required. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor.
Go ahead.
The financial consideration is for the Q2 look very good because the expense is we are favorable, and capital expenditure also under control, slightly unfavorable. And for about the loan, as of now, we are in a good positive cash flow. So I'm not sure, not even in favor of taking a loan, but in a Q3, after 2-3 months, I have a better idea. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Manish. I think that answered it. When you said we were slightly unfavorable on the capital side, what dollar value are we talking about? Do you know that amount?
Through you, Mayor. So the expenditure is like a 2% over than like it should be like a typically 50% when you consider as an because we are half the year through. So we little bit spend over means we have still 6 more months to spend. We may underspend that period of time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Manish. But you just mentioned it. It's only 2% over, so just very slightly over, not much at all, right?
Yes.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Lamb?
Yeah, it's just a comment on what Manish just said. When we did our budget, we intentionally did not or tried not to borrow any money this year because historically, when we borrowed money, it's been at 2% or 2.5%. Of course, now we're in the 7% range, and trying to borrow for 10 or 15 years at 7%, as most people know, with mortgages and things like that, is a heck of a lot different than borrowing at 2%. So hopefully, Manish, I guess my comment is you'll do whatever in your power to keep us from borrowing unnecessarily, I guess. Well, I think when we borrow, everything is necessary for us, so, but anyway, that's just my comment, so people know. In fact, we cut some things out because we didn't want to borrow. You know, you're caught in a situation of, you know, our overall tax increase with the education tax put in was just under 5%. So if we had decided to borrow, of course, that would have gone up. And, but we're trying to be prudent with what we've done this year, with the hope that maybe by next year it'll get financially a little bit more advantageous to us. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other, Councillor Bray?
Yes, and through you, Mr. Mayor, Manish, thank you for this report. It's really quite extensive and gives a lot of good information. I'm just looking at the revenue, the analysis, the revenue on page 123 of the package. You say we're approximately 33% under budget, which is a bit unfavorable, but is that because most of the grants don't come in till Q3 or we haven't received them yet?
We are going to do a final billing in Q3, and also a few of the grants we are expecting in Q3 and Q4.
That answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? If not, I think we can call the vote on this one.
Thank you. Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie,
Yes,
that's carried.
thank you. So 9.3 is our building services update for the last quarter. Mover and seconder, please, that the Council of Municipality Whitestone receives for information report BLDG 2023-03, which is the building services update and building permit activity report for the period April 1st to June 30th, 2023. And Councillor Bray moves. And Councillor Lamb seconds. Questions or comments on this one? Councillor Lamb.
I don't know whether is the building department on this. line?
He is not available tonight.
Oh, okay. My question just is, what did we put in the budget for revenue on this? And you're coming back.
Manish is
Yeah.
is
You
still
left
here,
it
and
there.
maybe he can answer your question. What?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, we've got a really tight budget, and what was the revenue that we projected and put in the budget this year for permits? And how are we tracking against that revenue? Because I noticed when I read all this that we're down, our building activity in the municipality is down, you know, significantly this year compared to last year. So can you tell us the budget number and what, for me, if you can't, then just get back to us as to what it is.
I can tell you right here, the budget was 135.
Yeah.
And the actual right now is 92.
Oh.
So we're in good shape. Less permits, but more value.
Okay, Manish, you can now leave. Got my answer.
We were trying to be conservative with the budget, actually.
Good.
Not understanding really what the building services was going to have to contend with this year.
Good, thank you.
All right. Anything else? If not, we can call the question on this one. To receive the report.
Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie,
Yes.
carried.
So 9.4 is a report from administrator Administration Department, related to the request to have the municipality provide year-round maintenance beyond the current on Schwaniga Lake Road, beyond the current turnaround for a further 2 kilometers. Mover and seconder that the Council of Municipality Whitestone receives for information report admin 2023-07. Schwaniga Lake Road request to have the municipality provide year-round maintenance beyond the current turnaround for a further 2.0 kilometers. Mover and seconder. Councilor Lamb moves, Councilor Bray seconds. Discussion on this one.
Would you like me to make a few comments? on
Oh,
the
yeah,
report?
sure, by all means.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report resulted from a presentation that council received on June 6th. And the direction of council at the time was very specific. That staff be requested to review the year-round maintenance request and document and report back to council on the process to assume a road at a future date. So there was 2 things that I did. I looked at the process that residents have to go through for the municipality to assume a road, and that's built into the official plan. And then I looked at the presentation that was presented to council on June 6th and addressed some of the presentation materials. So the official plan is very specific about how a road how the municipality assumes and maintains a road, and that's in 9.05, and it indicates the road has to be brought up to certain standards for the assumption paid for by the benefiting property owners. They're responsible for survey, legal, engineering, and construction costs. And it goes on further, talks about a few other things. It talks about road standards. There's some definitions built into the official plan for road standards, but the municipality also has a road standards document, which is surprisingly and still valid, still in good shape. And it was developed in Hagerman Township a number of years ago, I think back in 96. I'd have to look at my report here. So I looked at that. So it's very specific how a road has to be brought up to a certain standard before the municipality will assume it for year round. One of the items that I wanted to discuss was there was a Georgian engineering report, but there was a report from a previous road superintendent who made a recommendation to council that stated the first 2 kilometers are comparable to our standards for winter maintenance. However, there actually is no document. There's no standard for winter maintenance. What the municipality has is a standard for year-round maintenance and a year-round road. And the challenge with Schwaniga Lake Road in the first 2 kilometers, it's in pretty good shape right now. I drove it. It looks good. It's in the spring of the year, and it shows in the spring that there's a poor sub base, there's a poor base, and there's poor drainage. Excuse me, I just need to put some people in here. So I addressed that. I don't know the previous road superintendent, and I don't really know what he's thinking in terms of saying there was a standard for winter maintenance. The challenge is if the municipality provides winter maintenance, they currently provide summer maintenance, it makes this a year-round road, and it creates an asset that the municipality has to almost immediately upgrade because of the conditions that we see in the spring. So I just brought that to council's attention. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask if there are any questions from councilors on the report. Our manager of public works is also on the call, I believe. At least I mean, he shows that he's there, so. Are there any questions that you want to ask on at this stage?
Well, tend to always go first, so I'll go first again. So when this came up, and Margie, thank you for all your hard work on this. At the meeting where you came and presented, I went on and I encouraged people to listen. You can listen to what I said. And I said, this is an engineering play. and it still is an engineering play. It's not really what David thinks or you think or I think. There's a whole procedure, and I was part of setting the procedure up in years gone by. And it is simply, you need to follow that procedure, and you need to get a current engineering report that says what is needed to bring it up to year-round maintenance, because we don't have, as far as I know, winter maintenance standards, and it needs to be done at the cost of the benefiting people. The cost needs to be borne by them. And then I don't think we have much choice but to take it over once it is brought up to a condition that meet our standards. So there is provisions in our official plan, I think, that say we have to strive for equal services. And therefore, if the road's brought up, we would take it over. Just for information of people, in my 16 years on council, we've never taken a road over. There's been one or two attempts where people try to, and then it falls down at the point of saying, well, you owe me 5 or 10 or 15 grand to bring it up to standard, so we'll get winter plowing. That's when the rubber hits the road, and a lot of people say, I'm not doing that, right? So I guess those are my comments. It's still an engineering play. We've got our road superintendent saying it's not up to standard. So it's very difficult until it is brought up to standard from my standpoint to agree to take it over. So I guess that's my general comment. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Other comments from Councilor Bray? Any?
My question was, in looking at the different roads. So, can someone explain a little bit better for me the difference between what is a seasonal road? Because that's where I tend to, I'm not sure what that means.
I think I'll pass that over to our public works manager because he manages the seasonal roads per a bylaw that the municipality has. So Dave, over to
Go
you.
ahead, David.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. When we talk about seasonal roads, I should introduce myself, Dave Creaser, Manager of Public Works. When we talk about seasonal roads, we talk about the maintenance being seasonal maintenance, and that happens after May 31st to general Thanksgiving, when we maintain the road. At that point, the frost is typically out of the road or significantly out of the road, and we can do something with the road. We do our best to shape it and grade it and get the water running on the road. But that time, so that doesn't include the winter maintenance or the spring. And the spring is always the telltale signs of a road, what condition a road is in. If it's in poor shape, it certainly shows that in the spring. So a seasonal road is just maintained primarily in the summer months. Thank you.
That answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. And so the seasonal roads that we do have, are many of them, do many of them have been brought, we're up to standards so that they are plowed, or are a lot of them, again, not, are done by the residents of the area? Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Yep. Go ahead.
Generally, ratepayers, I believe in this particular portion, there's ratepayers that group together and look after the maintenance in the wintertime. And then the spring, they kind of fend for themselves. there's times that they do ask for help here and there. And extenuating circumstances, we do look and see if we can resolve significant issues that would restrict access. It's not very often. It's case by case situation. We don't completely ignore them, but typically the bulk of the work is done in the winter, and it's a case by case request for some assistance. If they certainly need assistance, maybe a washout or something like that, we certainly review that if we can to get people by and through. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lamb?
Yeah, just for clarification, to Councillor Bray. Again, I can't ever remember where we took over a seasonal road or started to plow it. I do think that as we go through, and I'm not sure whether it's the official plan that we go through or we look at our road standards, there are a set of conditions, and again, I'm no engineer, but the requirement for it to be tar and chipped, which is in our road standards, okay? And if you go down Balsam or Canning or some Farley's, they've been tar and chipped. They practically look like pavement, right? I don't know whether council can't, relook at the conditions by which we would take a road over, right? As part of, and I don't know whether it would be the official plan or just a subject that comes to council, and I don't want to presuppose, the decision there, but of course, there are many roads that are owned by the municipality. I live on one of them that are unassuming. So of course, we get no maintenance at all, right? And there are a lot more private roads. So, and the unfortunate part in a municipality is that it costs a lot of money to bring a road up to standard. That's just the reality. And you're not talking at $10,000 or something. You're talking in most cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? So it handcuffs not only our council, but many small communities to just start assuming roads. But there is a mechanism, as I said, by which we wouldn't have much of a choice. If it was brought up to standard, we take it over and we plow it and we do everything else on it, right? And how do you get it rolling? I would suggest you talk to the office, and I'm sure our CAO can direct you as to what to do. Well, again, this I'm that there's been reports in the past, but the clerk just said that it's not up to standard. I've said, well, she's a technologist to begin with and spent her whole career in roads, but anyway. Yeah, okay, but again, this isn't a debate, okay? What I'm trying to help you, okay? And while I'm explaining it to you, what you need to do at your cost is to go get an engineering report saying, well, yeah, you do. That's the bylaw. Okay, well, anyway, okay, Mr. Mayor, I'm not going to enter into it. This isn't a debate, okay? You asked me the question, and again, I'm going to be the bad guy here, I guess. You asked me the question, how do we get it started? I told you an answer that you get a hold of the municipality and you ask them, and they will detail out, it's in here, some of the standards, et cetera, that you need to meet. But the starting point is that, yes, you go out, and not just you, but anyone in the municipality, go out and get an engineering report. And that will tell you, in order to bring it up to standard, here's what's required and the approximate cost is whatever. Then it's up to you people on that road to then do that work, and then we take it over. That's the general thing. But again, I'm not trying to get, I've entered myself into a debate that maybe the mayor should stop me, but and correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, no, you're not. And I don't want to dissipate. I know the folks in the room here are sitting, waiting for this item, and I don't want to just sort of blow you off or whatever, but Councillor Lamb is correct in the sense that there is a process, and I'm not unsympathetic to what it is you want to do. There is a process, and the process it involves the steps that he mentioned. Essentially, there has to be some defensible opinion that we can rely on in terms of what is it going to take to put the road in a condition where in effect we can afford to maintain it. And for, I could give you examples, okay, because we have some forest roads, which is in essence that's what Shawanega Lake Road is, I guess. It didn't exist when I was when I was going through this process with respect to the road that I'm on, which is Washkish Road as an example. But the road was put there and it got extended and more people used it and so on. And the municipality is I mean, it's not that we're not sympathetic to what your need is, but the cost for us it then becomes a very expensive piece for us to maintain. And you can even go back to a road like the ones I'm thinking of, Washkish Road, Edgewood Road, are examples of this. These are gravel roads, and they were not built, with the exception of the odd little section that's been redone at some point. They were not built to a standard to maintain them. So what happens is that every spring when the frost comes out of the road, it really gets into bad shape. And the people who use it complain because it's in bad shape. And our staff go out and they try to do the best they can. But while there isn't enough substrate under the road for the water to get out of it. So it gets trapped in there. Then you get this clay action, expansion and contraction. You've seen it on your road. You at the right time of year, you stand in one place and you look a couple of feet. You step here and the road pops up a couple of feet from you, right? So that's the sort of thing that we're trying to get around. Now, there is a process. It's not like you have to raise all the necessary money, but you have to go out and get the users of the road to agree to absorb the cost of it over some period of time. And there is a process, and I think our staff can help you go through that, as Councillor Lamb suggests. Situations like this would be handled under a local improvement, where the cost would be spread out over many decades. I'm just stunned that the municipality doesn't have the set of tools in place to deal with this. Well, but we I'm sorry, but we don't, and we don't have development charges. The GTA, everybody has development charges, right? So you want to go and develop an area, like every time, if we had those kind of processes in place, every time somebody else, a new user came along to the road, we would say, okay, in order to approve your severance or your building on the Waterwood, or you'd have to put some money into this. But we don't have that. Now, the cost can be spread out over time. I'm not saying that can't be done, but it's not like the municipality says, okay, we will just absorb this in our tax base. We don't. I mean, if you look at the process we just went through for the budget, we can't afford to do that. That's what the issue really is. So, look, we're not really supposed to be in debate here. I mean, I don't mind taking a few questions from the public, but I think we have to figure out, like, council is not going to pass a motion tonight that says, okay, yeah, fine, we'll just do it, right? I'm sorry, this just started. We've been at it for 11 years, or longer. So don't imply that this started as of June. I apologize, but I'm not implying that. I've been here just from the time I've been on council. I've had a couple of delegations from folks on Shawanega Lake Road saying, please, could you do this right, to improve the road. And I think we probably gave the same answer before. I know that's what led to that study that was done by engineer Hughes that came up with the original cost of you know, and I think we paid for, I'm not even sure we didn't pay for that one, but in any case, it's still, we gotta get some sort of an update on what it is, what the cost would be of what you specifically want to do. And then we have to get some commitment that the ratepayers are gonna have some, on that road, are gonna have some skin in the game. That's, at least that's the process that we follow. Margie, yes, go ahead.
You gotta do it on the mic.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Des, I'm breaking the rules here because we should, everybody who's asking, who's commenting.
State
should
your
be
name
recorded.
and then your.
Hi, it's Margie Salegi, and I was the person who presented to council on June the 6th. And in the last couple of days, I sent an email to each of you, and I haven't received a reply to it. And one of the specific questions that I asked, and I'm still confused about, is I understand the process, Councillor Lamb. I understand the need to have an engineer report, and that unlike the 2006 report that the municipality paid for, and I'm not sure why they would pay for that one and not one now. I'm very confused and continue to be confused about that. But should we be the ones that are required to bear the brunt of that, to which standard would we aspire an engineer to upgrade the road to? Part of the problem is that many of the roads in the municipality that receive current plowing, year-round maintenance, aren't up to the standard. So are you suggesting that we have to go to the standard that council has aspired to? That's quite high, when in fact there are many roads in the municipality that are currently plowed that are not up to that standard. And if so, why do we have to go to a different standard? I find that inequitable. You know, I just speak to, you know, Farley's Road, for example, has a single lane bridge. And I've been told, well, we can't do Shawanaga Road because right before Granite, there's a very narrow, you know, area. And you go, okay, well, there is on Farley's Road too, but you plow it all the way down to the boat launch and include the boat launch in the last 2 years. So I don't understand this inequity. And I think that, as you know, I've been working on this issue and trying to gather information about the historical process for a long time. But that's one of the major questions that's outstanding for me. So I go out and I get all these people, and these, by the way, are all the people who plow, right? And have plowed your road for 10 or 15 years. And I say, okay, well, you know, guys, ante up, we have to get an engineer's report. But what do I tell that engineer? What standard? The standard that you've put on the roads now, or the standard that all the other roads in the municipality are to? So that's my question.
Okay, yeah, well,
Year-round, we need to have.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what the official plan says is any roads that are upgraded for assumption have to meet the year-round standard. And I don't disagree, and I don't think anyone on council would say that there are roads that are that the municipality maintains that are substandard in terms of width and drainage. These are roads that the municipality of Whitestone assumed when they became the municipality, and they had no choice to continue that particular maintenance schedule. But what council decided is that any new roads that are assumed by the municipality have to meet a certain standard. I don't think it's a rigorous standard. It's a reasonable standard in terms of platform width and drainage, culvert sizes, and simply the ability for the municipality to maintain that road year round without having to go in and do significant maintenance. So to your answer, to make a long story longer, it has to meet the standards that the municipality set. And the ones in the official plan and the ones that Hagerman Township set back in '96 are very, very similar. There's some differences, but they're generally the same.
Uh, Okay, look, I'm gonna have to draw this to a close just from a timing point of view, but ask your question, Margie, go ahead. Please, you use the mic so people can hear.
Hi, it's Margie again. So the question I have then is, so way back when, roads, what were the standards that were used to determine that Schwanaga at that time was a seasonal road as opposed to, you know, a year-round road? All these people have lived here back in 2000 when, you know, 2002, 2003, when the roads were were decided somehow at that point. And it seems to me that there's kind of like a quirk of fate that Shawanaga Road kind of just got left behind and I have never been able to figure out why that was. Why was, for example, Swords Road assumed at that time, but not Shawanaga? Well, someone lived there then, all these people. Anyway, that's my question.
All right, we'll get it.
I don't think I can answer that, but
Okay, well, we gotta do that.
And through you,
Oh, I think Councillor Nash.
you're breaking up, Councillor Nash.
are you able to hear me now? I think I muted myself.
Yeah.
I don't want to ask too many questions. I think most of them have been answered, but I just wanted to ensure I understood that in what the CAO had said and in what the roads department has said in their report, currently the road does not meet our standards, right? And that's the main issue here. I just want to make sure I fully understood that correctly.
Yeah, that is, I can affirm unless, I don't need to speak for them, but that is the conclusion that they came to, and our staff did when they looked at it. It's not.
That's in there.
It's what you have in front of you. There's, you know, it's not, anyway.
But the other report says it meets our standard, the one that was done by the road supervisor 5 years prior. It states the road, the 2 kilometers meets our standard. It's right in there, public record. And you say it hasn't changed since 96. So what's changed? That it no longer meets.
I believe that road superintendent was in error in saying that.
Oh, this is you now.
Well,
No. Well, I'm not going to argue with you. I wrote the report. I agree. My intent of this report was to give council the facts of what's in the official plan. Anything to do with the maintenance of the road and the condition of the road, especially in the spring, came from our public works manager. So he can tell you that there's parts of that road that are too narrow. There's parts of that road that have very little drainage, and the base and the sub base is very poor. And that's simply obvious by a visual inspection in the spring. And I know you folks have trouble traveling on that road in the spring. Not too bad. Yeah. Yeah.
That's all we're asking.
Right.
We just want to, we don't care about the maintenance of this stuff. Like it almost, since there is no standard for winter maintenance, perhaps there should be a standard for that, and it would probably address a lot of issues where the road wouldn't have to be brought up to the ultimate standard. We just need some help plowing. Because a lot of us are getting old. And, you know, somebody's gonna have a heart attack behind the plow.
But the other side of the coin is, for what you say the road that's narrowed and there's some bad spots, I can tell you that the first 1.5 kilometers is absolutely a mistake. that road, now, when you get into that area where the rock is, can we not, someone in your department say, up until kilometer X, this road is in good shape, we will take maintenance? I mean, I don't want the whole thing done this month. I want you guys to help us move the stick.
Well, I mean, I guess we could have some more discussion offline about this. I don't know. There are practical things, as you know, like if you're gonna run a plow truck in there, you gotta have a place to turn it around and all those kinds of things. So there's, yeah.
We own that land too, all this, here, all that belongs to Montreal.
Some people own multiple property.
Well, anyway, I don't know. I'm reluctant to go out on a limb here, but I mean, there may be some discussion that we could have offline and see if there's anything that can be done to address your concern. But for us to sort of, you know, to take over winter maintenance, that's a.
Kilometers up the road, is all you do. You're not, because you go in Shawnigan Lake Road for 3/4 of a kilometer. So we're only asking you to go that last little bit.
And different instances where there's a new plow driver and he's rolled down 50 kilometers, he turned around and came out. He didn't have any problems doing that.
But he doesn't go past where the narrow passage is, right?
As a matter of fact, I was coming out at the time, and he goes by, and I'm like, okay, stopped him on the way back, stopped him, thanks so much, just saved me too long. Is it in there? Still in there.
It seems like the issue is that, on paper, you need the road to be brought up to a certain standard before you assume that you do winter maintenance. And there's no standards for winter maintenance. But all we're asking for is plowing. We're not asking to have this as a fancy, road with, MTO standards and all that. We just need winter plowing, that's it. So perhaps to look at it from that perspective might move these concerns.
Okay, well, I think, thank you for coming and expressing your concerns. I think we need to move on for tonight, but so. Well, sorry, we have to move on with the meeting, and the only. Yeah, yeah.
We're paying the same amount of taxes as other people that can plow. So we're doing different actions. Like, why are we paying so much taxes and people that get plowing and we don't?
Which looking at Lormer Lake Road right across, you talk about some shift that Lormer Lake Road is in many parts of the UK, year round, no better than South. No better. That's a fact. Drive Lormer Lake Road and you say to yourself, look how far they plow down here. And the road is this?
Look at Swords or Farley.
It's not adequate. You got it right. Not adequate.
Unfair. We do have so many more people living there.
You guys approved all those lots. I don't get it. Like, why do you keep severing lots and approving them? You don't think people will move up here full time? Like, there's no planning there. Very little.
Well, that, yeah.
How in depth, and you have to tell us how, what your step.
This is on file. We can come into your office and find out what exactly you expect the road to be. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I said earlier, and you know what, no matter what council says, short of, we're gonna take over your road and start to plow it, which we're not in a position to do. And I could go on and on about other roads and other types of situations. This gentleman asked me what you need to do. I was trying to help, by saying what you need to do is, not, because you can shake your head, but, or ignore what I'm saying, right? I'm trying to answer the question. You can go in, you can find the standards that are on the road. And you can't get away, you need to hire an engineer. So you have to raise some money to do this, okay? I don't know how much the engineer would cost. And then he gets the standard and he goes down that road, the 2 kilometers or so. I drove it the other day or yesterday, I guess. And he says, in order to meet this standard, here's what you need to do. And I suppose here's the cost. Okay. And then you've got your starting point. Okay. But to sit and say a lot of the things that you're saying, this standard isn't just for Shawanaga Lake Road. This standard is for the whole municipality, right? And $25,000 or $30,000, okay, is a 1% tax increase, not for you, but for everyone in the municipality. And I hear what you're saying, but I was trying to give you kind of a way out. I was trying to say, maybe like when I look at it personally, and I'm not an engineer, when I see the standard for year-round road for us to take it over being tar and chip, I think that may be too far. Okay, maybe it doesn't have to be tar and chip, but I have no idea. I realize, but what I'm saying is the standard says tar and chip for us to assume the road. Well, yeah, but you need to come, I know, but listen, this isn't, I'm trying to explain things. It really isn't a debate. The process is there. And all I'm trying to say is follow the process and council will have to make a decision on it, right? And I did. But
Not a problem, we will start all over again from square one.
well, I'm not,
Those reports came from back then. Because that's.
okay, anyway, I'm trying to talk to you and you're not gonna just you're gonna overspeak as if we're gonna say, oh, thank you for saying that. We're gonna change our mind. We can't do it. We don't have enough information and there is a process. And I said, go in and see Michelle and she will take you or take a representative through the process of what you have to go through and anyone else in the municipality. Dozens and dozens, there's more private and unassumed roads than there are assumed roads, by the way, in the municipality. I'm trying to give you kind of a way out and I don't want you to go out and do something that you think is right and then come back and say, what about it now? We go, no, you didn't follow the process. There is a process. You may not like it, but it applies to everyone in the municipality. And our job as counselors is to make it fair and equitable for everyone, okay? For all roads, so that if any road comes to us, not just yours, then we'd have to do it, right? We'd have to say, great, we took that one over. We're gonna now take that one over, right? We're gonna take that one over. We're gonna take that one over.
Now see where you get your $1 million. Bring it up to the tar and chip.
Well, but you didn't hear what, okay, anyway.
Well, we're saying that.
Listen, I'm not gonna argue with you. You know,
Okay, folks, sorry, I'm.
but.
I,
Can you look at it and see how far you can take it up? Yeah. Doesn't have to be the 2 kilometers the first time. Take it up before.
There is a process that you need to go through, please, just, you're trying to pretend
Yeah.
that the process doesn't exist, it does. You have to go hire an engineer, you may not
Okay.
like that. Okay, I'm finished with it. Honest to God.
folks, listen, I hear your frustration and I appreciate your patience, but we need to move on. We will. I think you've heard the suggestion that you get maybe a representative to sit down with our staff and talk about and just make sure that you understand what needs to be done and maybe it'll turn out to be doable. I don't know, but we can't, we can't come to the conclusion that I know you want tonight and just say, okay, fine, you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Says it's up to standard. Leave them, but that's not council sit here and say. At the end of the day, I have a report that says that road was up to winter maintenance. It's in the report. So I might be wrong. That's not a really, really good answer. My belief is he was fine. He was paid off. Yeah. What is, why do you believe is he's wrong?
I'll just say one more thing, Mr. Mayor, and then I understand you want to move on. That report was taken to council. I've just put my report away, maybe 2012. Council didn't approve. They didn't approve what that road superintendent suggested was that winter maintenance proceed. I don't know why, it wasn't at the council meeting. There's no reference in terms of a resolution. So council didn't approve it and clearly didn't want to move forward with that. Yes.
Well, thank you for coming. So could I ask our clerk to call the question? And this is simply to receive the report and
Thank you, Councillor Bray.
Yes.
Councillor Lamb.
Yes.
Councillor Nash.
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
yes.
That motion carries.
All right, thank you. Our next section is bylaws, and the first bylaw
drink
was
in
the
there?
bylaw that relates to the conditions of approval for Mr. Duda's consent application.
Oh,
I'll test it and see if we have a mover and seconder for this, that bylaw number 49-2023 being a bylaw enter into an agreement for conditions of approval of consent B53-2022 Whitestown
Nice out now, eh?
be read a first and second time this 18th day of July,
Thanks,
2023,
Parson.
and further read a third time, passed and property signed and sealed this 18th day of July, 2023, and numbered by law 49-2023. So is there a mover and seconder for this motion?
well, I guess I can move it for discussion. Yeah, I'll move it. I'm trying to refer back to where.
Yeah,
referring back.
the bylaw itself is, well, we're sorry, I'm almost at the page. If I just flip through, here it is here. It's on page 173 of 200. But sorry, the bylaw is, but the agreement is back in the part where we dealt with
I would already do that.
page 35.
35.
Or-
Where we going?
Thank you, Paul. So page 35 is where you
Oh,
will
yeah,
find the
okay.
agreement. And
I see the sign. Where you?
so here we have, well, before we get into it, I guess we need a mover and seconder, otherwise
We have a mover.
we have a mover,
Mhm.
Councillor Lamb,
Councillor
and Councillor Bray seconds. Thank you. So it is open for discussion. The discussion that we had first, of course, had to do with whether we wanted a couple of those provisions that were in page 35 that the applicant was objecting to.
Well,
No, it's like weed.
if someone keeps talking, is that Councillor Nash?
I can hear Councillor Nash in the background. His microphone's not muted, but
Okay.
I don't know if he's talking to us or to
Yeah.
somebody else.
Is,
No, I'm here.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
so, I mean, I don't know, Mr. Duda has asked us to take out section 2, or part A, section 2 of the environmental report, and he's also asked us to take out part D, 10 and 11. I can understand 10. I'm not sure I understand 11. All setbacks shall comply with the requirements of the municipality zoning bylaw. I would think that would be, anyone has to comply to the zoning bylaw. Right? Like why would that come out, I guess is my question. And I don't know who's here to answer it.
Well, I think the answer is it isn't necessary because it's the law, but on the other hand, it's not wrong, right?
Well,
The principal issue, I believe,
is,
that Mr. Duda had was with number 10, which
Yeah.
basically tries to tie any envelopes and setbacks to that environmental report.
well,
So
so I mean, I can ask to amend, I guess, the consent agreement to take out number 2. Is John Jackson still with us? I assume not.
no, he's not.
By taking out the 3 areas that Mr. Duda wants taken out. I don't think he wants, I mean, he voluntarily did this environmental report, and I'm left with the opinion that it may or may not have been required, but now he's being asked to incorporate it, I guess, into, even though there's nothing environmentally in the report. That's what bothers me. It doesn't say there's landing turtles and there's snakes and there's birds and all this. There's nothing in there. But we're making him confirm the building envelope that I guess he initially, or someone, when he was looking for an easement, right? He was looking for an easement, and he didn't need the easement because he found out he had access through Gibson Bay Road. And we're going back and say, oh, but you need to get this building envelope, just as if it was the, so maybe I'm oversimplifying it, right? So if we'd had the information to begin with, that he had access through Gibson Bay Road, I think we would have approved this without any mention about building envelopes and whatever. So why are we doing it now when the basic change is that he's got access for these lots through Gibson Bay Road? So anyway, I guess I can amend it to say or then John said we can just say it's agreed to or something, that it'll do it or something. I don't know. I'm a bit confused, okay, to be honest. But I do think that we should be doing something here and not tying him to an environmental report for a building envelope that he did on his own when the situation has changed. And I think that's his point. So, I don't know. I'll take advice from people, including Mr. Duda, if you might, who may, I don't know whether he's still on the line or not.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Yeah, I think he is, but our clerk is
Yes,
going to
I'm still
speak
here.
first.
I think because this is a bylaw and there's some amendments to an agreement, I'm wondering if council is agreeable to defer this until August 1st. We'll come back with a different agreement. It'll link properly to the bylaw, and it's a lot cleaner than trying to amend an agreement within the resolution of a bylaw.
And then through you, Mr. Mayor, then you could talk to Mr. Duda and make sure you understand exactly what he's getting at. And
Yeah, I think there's been many conversations between him and John Jackson and Paula Macri. So it'll be a group conversation. I probably won't be as involved as others, but
Okay.
I think there needs to
Yeah.
be some clarity as to what this bylaw is approving. It's a little bit different than a resolution. You want everything intact without making amendments on the floor.
I was going to suggest something similar, and the simple reason is that if you read clause 2, the kind of the fine print, it says the environmental study was relied on by the PSAPB in approving the consent applications. So theoretically, the PSAPB could turn around and say, well, if we don't want this if we want to take this out of the agreement, then then the planning board needs to revisit whether or not it wants to approve it without that information. No, I'm not. we have a couple of representatives on that board, so you can certainly address that at the meeting, but
That's a good punt.
but however, it might be advantageous, as the clerk has suggested, that we try and get this out of the way in the first place and see, I mean, I kind of heard Mr. Jackson say, oh, well, if you really don't want it, you know, you can take it out, but, and I think number 10 hangs on almost the two, they're almost the two things, it's the same issue.
Yeah.
You know, the issue really is does it need to be there? And I would simply point out to everyone as you're thinking about this, and if we decide to defer it, that at the end of the day, assuming that this gets approved and these deeds got registered and everything, then going forward, it is on the municipality to decide what it's going to do about this, about these things down the road. I mean, the planning board doesn't get involved again. It falls to us. So in any case, that's,
Mr. Mayor, may I chime in?
Yeah.
It's Robert Duda.
yeah.
Yes, thank you. That's a very good point, and I think the decision here should stay within Whitestone. To the point of getting back to debate and having more discussion, I spent enough money and time on lawyers, and every time I have to do something, you know, I have to go to a lawyer, right? And they got to review it, and it costs me money. And that's one of the frustrations I have with this, is that the additional requirements in here, which was not what was discussed, and I will just not agree with John Jackson, and it cost me more money. So I really prefer today if we could just decide to take out number 2, number 10 and 11, and I think it's a pretty clean and finished process, and it meets all the requirements. I have to meet the laws in the future. I've done this proactively. All I'm doing is severing, and there's nothing to do with building in the future. If there is a decision to build something, I have to go through all the process of getting building permits, setbacks, septics, all those regulations, and I'm prepared to do that in the future. So for right now, I'd just like to finish this process. It's been 2 years that I've been working at this to help the town participate in all the meetings to get my land treated the same as across the street. And once again, I'm sitting here where the people across the street, they don't have to go through environmental reports and all this and attach things to their deeds. They can just build a garage because they're rich waterfront people. And this is very frustrating that now we're back again and I'm treated differently again. And it's frustrating as council. I hope you can understand that. It's just constantly, I'm considered a backlot and just add extra things. And I think you just need to look at this like piles of other consents that have no environmental attachment to it, but it's dealt with in the future when there is a specific issue, or sorry, a specific proposal for a building, a structure, and it's handled at that time. Thank you.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, if you can hear me, am I able to speak now?
You're able to speak, Councillor Nash. Yes, go ahead.
All right, perfect. Thank you. And I'm in an area that I believe there'll be good signal for the rest of the evening. So sorry about earlier. I guess I want to thank Mr. Duda for speaking tonight and bring to light some of the items that he'd mentioned on the email that he'd sent, I think, council earlier today. And personally, I have no issue deferring it, but I also have no issue in removing the items that Mr. Duda has asked for in his review of what was presented to him by the municipality. I think just overall as a municipality, I think we need to be very careful in adding or interpreting things that the planning board might have said. And it would appear to be, from what the applicant thinks, adding things in that wasn't there. And when I look at it, I know that it was only mentioned about the building envelopes. And if the item number 2 wasn't there referencing how we made decisions or how the planning board made decisions based on environmental reports, I don't think that's something that needs to be in there. if there was simply a sketch and nothing more than a sketch showing here's the building envelopes, I think that might be appropriate, but I have no problem removing the 3 items. Now, just for some context, and I think it was spoken to earlier at the planning board meeting, the whole issue about the building envelopes only came up in regards to the easements. And as we all know now, the easement issue has been cleared, I'll say, or confirmed that easements aren't needed. So I would agree that I don't think we need them there. So I didn't first or second the motion, but if it was amended to remove those items, I'd have no concerns with that.
Okay, I think the
yeah.
only concern, however,
Sorry.
is the one that the clerk, if we would have to amend the agreement before we can amend before we can pass the bylaw. So we would end up with something that's more complicated, and I wonder if we can get there by taking this offline for a meeting, if that isn't the easiest way to get around it. I mean, right now, what we have is we have a motion on the floor to approve it. We'd have to, I guess, well, we can agree to defer it, or we can, to another meeting, or we can, then if we're going to, we've got to amend the agreement before we can actually pass the bylaw, right? So
Yeah.
otherwise, we're just approving the bylaw as the form that it's in, which
Yeah,
doesn't.
that's my point.
Yeah.
And sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. I really think the CAO has a good suggestion here. I know it's one more meeting, but it'll all be tied together properly. And I don't think anyone is against what Mr. Duda necessarily is saying, but it needs to be tidied up so that we're in a position to pass it at, say, the next meeting or next month. And I think to just pass it tonight, I think we should just wait one more meeting, right? Because the other thing is maybe 2 people don't agree with it and it gets defeated, and I would hate to see this thing get defeated. So I think if we wait one more meeting, get it cleaned up, I think you'll find that most of council will probably agree on this. So anyway, that's my thoughts.
All right.
It's Robert Duda. It's Robert Duda.
Councillor Bray
Thanks, Joe.
has a comment.
Oh, I was gonna say that as a seconder, I'd be happy to defer till the August meeting so that we can make sure we have a proper agreement in front of us.
So what do you need?
need to call
Madam
the
Clerk,
question.
do we just call the motion to defer?
Yeah, so this is now the motion, that bylaw number 49-2023 being a bylaw to enter an agreement for conditions of approval of consent B 53-2022 in brackets W be deferred. That's the motion.
And it is, and it's still the same mover and seconder are moving that motion.
Yep.
If they
Councillor
are,
Lamb and Councillor Bray, all right. Do you want to call the question in, please?
well, Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie,
Yes.
that motion carries.
Okay, thank you. The second one that we have
Sorry,
under bylaws is 10.2.
Mr.
And
Mayor?
this is the one from Mr. Mason, in which there were, if you recall, some questions. And there is an opportunity. I think there was a suggestion that this matter also be deferred, but one way we can do that is if there's no mover and seconder, then it gets left to another meeting. So if,
But through you, Mr. Mayor, if we defer it, it comes back. If there's no mover and seconder, does it necessarily come back? I guess is my question.
all right, well, I'll read the motion and if someone moves to defer, then that's the cleanest way. So the suggested motion was that bylaw number 50-2023 being a bylaw for a zoning bylaw amendment to rezone part of lot 4 concession 4 Mackenzie being part 1 on plan 42R4131 in the geographic township of Mackenzie from the waterfront 3 limited services zone to the waterfront 3 limited services exception zone be deferred. Is there a mover and seconder for that one?
I'll move.
That's moved by Counselor Bray, seconded by Counselor Lamb. We'll take that out of there. Any further discussion?
Margie put her hand up and I thought she was seconding the motion, but she's actually knitting, I think, out there.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so if not, if there's no further discussion, can we?
Thank you. We're calling for this
Call roll.
bylaw to be deferred, and Counselor Bray,
Yes.
Counselor Lamb,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
So that motion is carried.
All right. Oh, I'm way back in my. Anyway, I'm gonna keep going. Item 11 is a memorandum in regards to general public use of the Farley's Road boat launch. So, and you have a report. Could I get a mover and seconder, please? The Council of Municipality of Whitestone receives for information the memorandum entitled Farley's Road Boat Launch General Public Use. And that the Council of Municipality of Whitestone approves the use of the Farley's Road Boat Launch for shared use between the deeded access properties and day use only public parking. And that staff be requested to install signage to designate the 2 distinct parking areas as soon as practical. And that the current bylaw number 25-2020 being a bylaw to regulate traffic and to govern and control the parking of vehicles in the municipality of Whitestone be updated to reflect the above referenced direction of council. Is there a mover and seconder for this? Councillor Lamb is moving. Councillor Ray is seconding. Discussion.
Yeah, through you. Oh, yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just
Councillor
very
Lamb?
quickly, I thought we had done this before. So
Yeah,
I
we
think
didn't.
this is just reaffirming what we did. And I know 3 weeks ago, I was talking to our CAO and she informed me that we hadn't done this.
Yeah.
So this just cleans it up, I think, and I think makes it equitable for everyone down there. So thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Counselor Bray.
I'm sorry, I should have asked if there's anybody else who wishes to speak to this.
Yeah, there is. I just had it.
Councillor Nash?
No, sorry. I didn't have any questions. Sorry.
Okay, all right. Sorry, I thought you were maybe trying to get in. Go ahead. Councillor Bray, did you want to speak? No? All right, so we're calling the roll for the vote.
Counselor Bray.
Yes.
Thank you, Counselor Lamb.
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Okay, next, we have 11.2, and there is a request, a letter requesting support for an application for funding by Community Support Services. And just so you know, this is an organization that is actually housed in Belvedere, in Parry Sound, at the Belvedere location. And they provide various services for seniors, and they in fact are the ones who fund and sponsor our walk fit that we have here. And also I think they're called Lunch and Learns now. They used to
Yeah.
be called the seniors luncheons, but again, they sponsor those activities. And they do, of course, many other things in other parts of Westbury Sound. But anyway, this is a request from them and you have it in front of you. So I'm looking for a mover and seconder that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone supports the Community Support Services funding application for a seniors active living center. That's what they're called. And continued programming for Whitestone seniors, and that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone agrees to continue its in-kind contributions for CSS in the form of providing the Dunchurch Community Center at no cost for the Walk Fit program and the monthly Lunch and Learn Seniors program. Councillor Bray is moving. Is there a seconder? Councillor Lamb, discussion. Anybody? Yes.
Yeah, I'm in,
Councillor Lamb.
yeah, I'm in support of this. I just wondered why the letter from the West Perry Sound Community Support Services doesn't mention McKellar in the last paragraph on page 183.
Okay, the clerk is going to answer your question.
Yeah, that's, I asked the same question of them. They sent the letter to the communities that support their programs right now. They don't do any programming in McKellar at this time. And they simply do programming in the communities that they mentioned here.
Oh.
There's no Lunch and Learn. In fact, I think McKellar folks come from McKellar to the Dunchurch Lunch and Learn, and they don't have a Walk Fit program.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Are you ready for the question then?
Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
All right. 11.3. New pumper fire apparatus consultant proposal. The motion I'm looking for is that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone receives for information memorandum, new pumper fire apparatus consultant proposal, and that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone agrees to proceed with engaging Performance Concepts Consulting Incorporated to assist the municipality with a report in respect of the purchase decision for a new pumper fire apparatus. If I can get a mover and seconder, I think our CAO will speak to this.
I can move that, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Lamb moves.
I think I hear Councillor Nash second.
Councillor Nash, did you second?
Yes.
That's what I
Okay,
thought.
Councillor Nash seconds. Thank you. Now we can have discussion. Well, do you want to make a comment, Michelle?
I can make a few comments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think the memo says it all. I took the direction of council, and I did work with our fire chief, Bob. We talked about, you know, what the consultant would do and the kind of things they would look at, and how there's other options out there, and Bob is agreeable to, our fire chief Whitman is agreeable to get some assistance with this. In spite of best efforts, and there are numerous consultants out there, but we could only find one that was willing to bid on this is a very small project actually compared to some of what the work that consultants do. So these folks, this is work that they do. They seem able to do it. I know Chief Whitman has spoken to him, and he seemed like he was someone that he could work with. Really, this project would be led by the owner is Todd McDonald. It's going to be led by a guy named John Rono. But Todd indicated to me he'd be very involved. It's certainly more than I anticipated. I was thinking somewhere in the range of $5,000 to $8,000. It came in at $15,000, which is why I brought it to council, even though there was direction to proceed with the consultant. So simply a little bit higher than what I expected. But by all accounts, these folks know what they're doing, and I think they'll work well with our fire chief and come up with a report. They're going to look at all sorts of things, including used vehicles, and there are some options out there. And I know our fire chief is 3 Bob 1. Is that our fire chief?
All right.
on Zoom. Just wondering if that's our fire.
Bob
chief.
Whitman, are you on this call?
Oh, he is good. Maybe Bob can speak to this because this is really
So
his
how
project.
do you get 3 Bob 1? You need to unmute yourself, Bob. Now you're muted. Nope. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Yeah, I don't know where I got.
Can't hear you, Bob.
I'm sorry.
Maybe
what-
turn up your volume, Bob.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah, I don't know where,
Um,
I don't know where 3 Bob 1 come from. I have no idea.
don't
Can you hear
worry. Just, did you want to make a comment?
No, I'm good.
Oh, you gave him an opportunity. Councillor Lamb has a question or a
Yeah,
comment.
it's just a comment. On the proposal, second line, it says an upset fee. Could that be an upside fee? Is that the correct, is that what I should read on that?
Well,
know
you
what
often,
an
often see consultants say an upset fee. In other words, they're not going to charge you any more than $15,000. Yeah,
I did-
and no disbursement.
No, upset is the standard word, yeah.
Okay,
for
I
that.
never
Yeah.
saw upside. I've seen
Yeah.
lots of upsides, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just want to make sure, I know that when we discussed this, there were a number of options that I had on my mind. That I want this person to at least listen to our discussion that occurred at council a month or so ago, so that they at least, recognize what myself and maybe other counselors had as questions on this. And, maybe they just dismissed them, but that included like, what happens if we do nothing and, all the way through. So just listen to the tape. I think this is a big enough expenditure, that we should get this report, and it may help us. I think it will help us, in fact. And so I'm supportive of it. 15,000 is a little much, but 750,000 is a little much too. So anyway, I think we're best to get the advice, because there's a lot of questions we had that haven't been answered, and we haven't been able to sort of get answers. So hopefully they can. So I'm supportive of this. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments?
If I might, through you, Mr. Mayor, if you can hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I guess I just have a couple comments in regards to it. I think overall, I think the $15,000 is quite a lot to put a tender together for a fire truck. And I guess to that point, I did try and look on our website under the procurement, and I didn't notice that there was an RFP put out for a request for proposal for consulting fees. So I appreciate that that staff has gone out and has been able to get one bid, but I don't know if we might not put out the public tender to get to see if we can obtain 3 prices. Again, maybe it was taken down, but I didn't see anything on the website. I know that's part of our protocol to go out and put out a public tender for it. But at the same time, with that said, $15,000 to me is quite a bit, like I'd said, to put a tender together for this. And I know on other larger purchases, they haven't been $750,000. But I don't know if it was the nursing station, we might have had an architect working with us, but for something like the excavator, we did not have a consultant do it. And I think if we're going to start getting consultants involved, I think we as council need to decide what's the dollar value that we start getting consultants involved to help staff out on larger purchases. That might be for another meeting, but based on the $15,000 and based that I didn't see on the website the notification of the public tender going out for it to consultants, I wouldn't vote in favor of it, because I think there might be a way that we can get that cost maybe down more to where staff had thought it was at 5,000 to 8,000 if we can get a few more competitive bids. So that's where I'd be looking at. Still do it, but hopefully we can get it down if there's a way to get a few more bidders involved in the process. So thank you.
If I could speak to that, this was this is a very specialty consulting. And so the way we approached this was we looked to outside players, people that I knew, people that I knew who knew people, and just did some research. It wasn't a public tender, it was by invitation, and that's not an unusual process. And in fact, because I was expecting it to be under 10,000, it was somewhat of an informal process. And sometimes that's a risk because you have an expectation of what something might cost, and it comes in over, and maybe should have been a formal RFP as opposed to an informal request. But that's where it ended up. I don't think posting something on the website for something like this is going to get much attention, simply because you're going to find someone, a consultant, who's not from this area, who has, a specialty skill that you're not going to find in the Parry Sound area.
I would just add to our CAO's comment. There were a couple of other people that sort of came up on the radar when I was digging around looking to see who we might get to help us with this. And what she says is true. They're not exactly falling out of trees. This is not a big area of consulting for anybody. I did have a lead on a couple of folks, and in some cases, they were prepared to help us find a used truck. There are a number of people out there who are willing to do that. And that's what they do as a living. But there are also two of them who might have been prepared to also deal with some of the sort of bigger questions we were asking, were, as it turned out, were not that interested, and they were based in the United States. One of them's in Las Vegas, right? And works with a company that sources fire trucks, right? So they got lots of experience with lots of different things, but they're not local and aren't familiar with their customers. They're probably bigger than ours are, most of them, for the most part. So we did, and I passed on to Bob there are some local folks who will help find a used fire truck if that's what ultimately we wanted to do. But they are not consultants, and they're not folks who are going to answer the other questions that were raised in our discussion. So I think we probably, if we went back out and tried to tender for some more, we would likely end up simply delaying things. And so I'm going to support us moving on. I am confident. I know who this individual is. At least I recognize who the owner of the company is. And I think, based on what I was able to find out about him, I think he'll probably do a decent job. So this will get us moving, and that's, I don't think anything would be gained by retendering it. We might end up with the same person again. Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, I don't know what the consultant will come up with, right? There were a whole bunch of things, from what happens if you don't do anything, what happens if it's 30 years instead of 25, what happens, there were a whole bunch of things, right? That this person, I assume, is going to run down and give, a full report to council. Here's your options, here's your cost. Maybe out of that, he says, oh, you should rebid. I don't know what he's going to say, but it's a lot more than just a request for proposal.
Yeah.
Like, this is 15,000 for him to write up a spec and send it out and say, I did my job. It's far better, far greater. So That's why I'm in support. We asked for the help when we discussed this item. We didn't know, on lots of questions up in there, we didn't know what to do, so we asked to go get someone. A little more expensive than we thought, but we found someone, so hopefully we'll come back to council, with information, so we can make a proper decision for the municipality. I don't, yeah, that's all.
Okay, well, thanks. We're past our curfew and we need to do a curfew. Are you ready for the question on this one? Can we? Did you want to speak,
Well,
Councillor?
yeah, I have one, just one
Yeah.
quick, I know we're past, and that is that I guess I'm more in support of doing this than I am of us just going to a company that sources trucks that we don't get to see, we don't get to try out, we don't get to have somebody else look at to make sure that it's the standard of what we would want. And also that, you know, when they don't have it, they don't guarantee what they do and they don't have any warranty, that, you know, we're really stuck with whatever we get if we go that route. So I would much prefer to do this. At least we'll have some kind of a report, whether it's where it lands. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Okay, thank you very much. Did you want to say something, Bob, or are you? Sorry, you're not muted, but we can't hear you. I don't know if you're too far from the mic or,
Can you hear me now?
yeah.
Oh, good. So just a quick question. So if this consultant comes back and says, hey, you guys should have 2 new fire trucks, are we taking his word or are we just gonna go to somebody else, or how does that work? Since I've never done this before. If he comes back and says you should buy a used one, is that what we do, or how does that work? Just a question.
Well, I think I mean, I don't know that we can, without saying what he, you know, what he recommends at the end. I don't know how we can judge. I guess council will have to consider his recommendation and
Well, it's just, I hate to,
and so will you.
just would hate to spend all the money and then at the end, we don't listen to what they say, regardless of what it is, because we don't want to do whatever they decide. I think that would be the wrong way to go. So just my thoughts. Thanks.
Councilor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think, Bob, I would expect them to maybe delineate, you know, maybe 2 or 3 options and the cost of those options, right? Therefore, council would then look at it along with you and make a decision on it, right? That's what I would expect coming back, not necessarily a single option, but otherwise we haven't done the work on other options, right? So, and maybe when they look at other options, whatever they are, they may discount them for whatever reason. They may come up also with funding. I don't know enough about it, but hopefully they do. So maybe there's something out there I don't. But we're not encumbered to take their recommendation. That's your question. I think we would spending this money, we would probably do what they say.
Yeah.
But we're not tied to their.
No. Okay, thank you. Can we do the question and on this one?
Mr. Mayor, if possible, I have one really, really quick question, but if you want to call to vote, I understand that too. I'll leave that up to you.
Well, we're into our curfew that we haven't moved yet, so I would like to wrap it up if we can, please. Thanks. Go ahead.
Calling the question?
yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb, Councillor Nash,
No.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Okay, now, thank you. Now we need to do the curfew motion.
I've expanded it.
What?
expanded it slightly.
Well, do you want me to read the whole thing? Okay. Whereas section 9 of the Municipality of Whitestown Procedure Bylaw number 40-2012 is amended, being a bylaw to govern the proceedings of council, its committees and boards of the Corporation of the Municipality of Whitestown states, no item of business may be dealt with at a council meeting after 3.5 hours of the meeting unless authorized by a resolution supported by 2/3 of the members to an additional 1/2 hour. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby continues the July 18th, 2023 regular council meeting past the allotted time of 3.5 hours and continues for an additional 1/2 hour. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Bray, Councillor Lamb. Call the question, please.
Counselor Bray,
Yes.
Counselor Lamb, Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie,
Yes.
motion carried.
So we are at, next thing we are at is correspondence. And there are a series of items there. This is going to see if I can find what I've done with them, but wait a minute, here they are. So there are 4 items, A, B, C, D. Let's get a motion, please. And the motion would be,
I'm not sure.
sorry, I
there's a-
don't see the motion, but anyway,
We
that,
can make one.
Hmm?
There's, the motion is missing, but I can write one as we go. That we receive. the
well,
correspondence.
that we received the following items for correspondence with the ones, with the following excluded, and we can decide if you want to exclude any of them. So that's the motion. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Bray, Councillor Nash, Councillor Lamb, I'm sorry. You can tell we're past curfew. Yeah, okay. Anyway, so it's moved and seconded that we continue. Please call a question.
Are there any correspondence extracted?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I guess we could ask if they're. You want to extract any of them? Councillor Lamb wants to extract B. Carling and the Perry Sound Area Planning Board. Okay. Anybody else have any they want to? Carling. PSAPB. Anything else? No? Oh, Councillor Bray.
Yeah, A, for further discussion, not,
So A is Selwyn
Is the
Reach
short-term rental.
STRs, yeah. Any others? Okay, if not, let's call the question and then we'll. Who did we? No, we didn't.
We did not.
No, you.
Counselor Bray, Counselor Bray,
yes.
Counselor Lamb, Counselor Nash.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Comrie,
Yes.
motion is carried.
Okay, thank you. So under matters arising from correspondence, the first one is this resolution from Selwyn regarding short-term rentals. And what they're really asking is that the province weighed in and required the short-term rental company to ensure that they have a, you know, that the person listing has a you know, permit to rent and to remove them if they're offenders. So that's what it's really, this is a request to ask the government to to make some sort of policy on that. So anyway, you wanted to comment. It's your item.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This one is certainly of interest because I've had several calls from people around short-term rentals and noise and different things. And I just think that if excuse me, if the province can do this so that the short-term rental brokerage companies are mandated to make sure that their rentals have a license. If it's in our municipality, then I think then we have a better record of who is where and what's happening, and it will help us in the long term with data as to whether how many complaints we're having. Are they all in the same area? Are they the same places? Is it scattered? And it gives us a better base to be able to make decisions around what the short-term rental regulations should be. Thanks.
So you're wanting us to support this resolution?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, okay.
But I wasn't sure whether we could do something tonight, but that it come back at a later time, probably.
That's the best option. So
Yes.
we can take some time to write a resolution and you'll see it on August 1st. That's the most appropriate way.
Okay,
to
well,
handle it.
we can take that motion when well, I guess we could take it right now. We already voted on the mean.
Yeah, we voted for the correspondence, but
Yeah, but
my plan is to come back with a formal resolution of support on August 1st.
okay, so this is just a staff request then.
This is a councilor request.
Any other comments from Councillor Lamb or Councillor Nash? Hmm.
Sometime over the next couple of months.
Hmm.
Go up, and I agree with you. We all get involved in different, not the good short-term rentals, but on the bad short-term rentals, right? So, I've been involved as the mayor on the east. So it's coming, so I don't know. To be honest, I read this, and I wasn't going to be distracted, so I don't know exactly what I've approved, but if the letter comes back with the motion, then I think we're in a better position to support it and offer.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, just make.
Councillor Bray?
Yeah, that I think that bringing it back means that we have time for those who need to look at this letter, as well as when we do get the letter of support or whatever, we can then look at we can discuss it, and if people are in favor of it, I would hope that we would move forward with it. Thanks.
Okay, any other comments? I guess my position is it can't hurt. It could take a while. I mean, this is a petition. It could take a while for the government to take any action on it, and I don't think we're gonna stop working on our bylaw while we wait for their answer, because that might be it might be a while coming. But anything they do would probably help us, and it's not going to hurt if I don't see what the harm would be if.
Our short-term rental bylaw first made way back. I was part of it. In fact, I think at the time I was threatening when this happened, but the world has dramatically changed since that time. I don't even think there was DRB other sites at that time. But one of the big issues is that there are people that rent, do it responsibly and interview everyone, and it's good to the home and stuff. Then there are others who just fund it and and they really don't know how many, it says maximum 8 people, suddenly 18 people show up. And that's what so I think it'll come back. I think I'll be supportive of that.
All right, thank you very much. Item B was the two Carling resolutions, and I don't think they're asking us to do anything. They're just informing us that they have asked twice now to withdraw from the planning board,
Yeah.
which I knew.
And Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
I think at the last meeting, this was kind of sort of dealt with at the planning board. And they sort of pulled it back to rethink the different, they go back to spring, but I think the things brought up that they need to go back to their. So yet to be determined.
All right, thank you. Well, we're getting down towards the end of the next.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Did you have a comment on that one, Councillor?
It was just, I believe maybe Councillor Lamb's mic might be off. I just couldn't hear what he was saying there. That was all.
I think it is. I think it's out of power.
Well, I'll get you on another one.
Sorry, Councillor Nash. Out of power. I'm gonna use yours because you're not here.
Yeah, that one sounds like it's live.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Nash, I was just saying that this has been dealt with at the planning board and Carling was sort of taking it back to rethink what they were going to do and nothing was really passed, as I recall, at the planning board. And these letters from Carling aren't asking us to do anything. So at this point, we're not doing anything. I think that's what I said. Thank you.
Okay, anything further on correspondence? All right, councillor items, number 13. Anything? Press,
When's our next meeting?
it's the August the 4th? No,
August 1st.
1st.
Okay. That's good.
Yes,
Isn't that a stat holiday? No?
Tuesday, August 1st.
Oh.
The stat holiday actually is August 7th this year. It's later.
Oh, all
later
right.
than
So
normal.
it's, so yes, and it's here in Dunchurch. We did design that.
Yes, the
And
August.
book sale is here on the long weekend, which is like the 5th and the 6th.
Yeah.
I think it's.
Yes, the 5th and the 6th, just before the civic holiday.
What books what would you do?
It's the library book sale and dunk tank.
Oh, you're talking about the library? Oh, all
Yeah,
right,
that's-
sorry.
I'm sorry, I should have said library. It's the annual book sale.
Yeah, now I know what you're talking about. Sorry.
Where the dunk tank. here.
Yeah.
And I'm going in and
Okay.
they're probably gonna raise the cost of it, because my family's gonna spend enough money to dunk me that will pay for the cost of it. And,
All right. So is there any other? Were you going to say something more about it or?
No.
Oh, okay. Councillor Bray, did you have an announcement? Councillor Nash?
I do not tonight. Thank you for asking though.
Okay, thank you. All right, number 14, questions from the public. We have one member of the public left in our hall here, and we have a couple on Zoom. Full of very patient people. All right, I'm going to move on in the interest of time and can see if we can get home here. Confirmatory bylaw, could I get a mover and seconder, please? That bylaw number 51, 2023, being the confirmatory bylaw for the regular council meeting of Tuesday, July 18th, 2023, be given a first, second, third, and final reading and is passed as of this date. Councillor Lamb moves, Councillor Bray seconds. And I think you can call the question now.
Thank you.
Madam
Councillor
Clerk?
Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
It's carried.
Whereas the business of this meeting has concluded, now therefore be it resolved that this meeting be adjourned at, it looks like 10:29 PM. With the regular council meeting, I'm sorry, until the regular council meeting of Tuesday, August 1st, 2023 at 4 PM. Or at the call of the chair. Mover and seconder, please. Counselor Bray moves. Counselor Lamb seconds.
My bedtime alarm, my bedtime things go off.
Counselor,
There you go. Mine will go off soon. No, I'm just, all those, don't worry,
I
yeah,
get a half hour notice.
yeah, oh, I see.
Counselor Bray,
Yes.
Counselor Lamb,
Yeah.
Counselor Nash,
Counselor Nash, are you still there?
Oh, yeah.
we're
Yep, yeah.
adjourning.
You said yes.
He said yes. Mayor Comrie,
Yes.
thank you. Motion is carried.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your patience and perseverance, everybody, those of you, give your arms who've been constantly putting your arms up, give them a rest. And enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy the rest of your week. It'd be nice.